Good morning, everybody, and welcome to July 14th meeting of the Northport Village Corporation Board of Overseers. I'm John Spritz, the president. We have, as always, a lot under our belts to accomplish today, so we shall move forward. The first thing is to approve minutes of the May 12th and June 16th meetings of the Board of Overseers. You'll recall that at last month's June meeting, there was still a question about approving the May minutes, so those are delayed until now. We had a fresh set that was given to everybody at last month's meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those two sets of minutes, or do you want to approve them separately?
I need Vicki to send me her version again because on Drive, I don't think your changes saved.
Anyway, so we'll skip May again.
We'll skip May again then.
Yeah.
Then we'll just move to June.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Just a second, please. I'm just writing down because she's not in here who made the, okay?
Jeffrey and Michael.
Any discussion?
Yes. On page, well, I guess, I don't know how we're counting this, page 3 on the tree committee, second dot, a small subcommittee looking at planting. Nothing will be planted this summer, but planning and public input will take place. It's not public input, there will be no public input. Okay. With our ordinance, if we decide to plant a tree, we will talk to the people that might be affected by wherever the tree is planted, but it's not going to be an open discussion about whether to plant a tree in Marcos Park.
Are you going to have any public meetings this summer?
About what?
Just in general?
No?
Not at all?
Well, or meetings of public, I guess.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I think that's fine in the sense that it doesn't have to be a special meeting. This is a special meeting, just that they could provide us input. Right? At any time.
Anytime, right?
Right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, is that a request to the tree committee to have a meeting, or is that?
No.
Losing where we're at here.
All I announced in my report that we have a subcommittee that is going to start looking at appropriate places to plant trees, to replace the trees that have been removed, and to look into appropriate trees to plant there. There was no discussion about we're going to have a public meeting about that. Just the subcommittee is going to start trying to decide so we can move forward and start planting some trees.
So in terms of these being a record of what the committee reported last month, she's asking that the language and public input be stricken from these because that wasn't part of her report. That's what.
Thank you.
Any other commentary on the June minutes? So with that change and public input being stricken, all in favor? It's unanimous, thank you.
I would like to suggest that we go ahead with the May minutes, because my perception of what happened in May is very different from what I see in the minutes, but I feel that I'm alone with this, so whatever she's missing, I don't think I have at this point, and it's now so many months away. I have let my disagreement with that go and let the minutes stand as they are, rather than drawing this out for another month.
Is there a motion to approve the May minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? That's unanimous in the May minutes, thank you very much. We have, for people who are new to this meeting, two opportunities during the meeting for guests to speak to the overseers at this point, and then at the conclusion of the meeting, because that was inserted about a year ago, because some people had said, well, sometimes things happen during the meeting, and we want to be able to comment on that at the end of the meeting. So we now have two opportunities. In either one of which we asked people to stand up, identify themselves and where they're from, whether it be if they're at Bayside Street or outside of Bayside organization or whatever, if you can, stand kind of at the corner of that table, that point there in front of Mike Lannon, because that way the video camera picks you up. And to keep your remarks concise. That's all I'll say. So, is there anybody who would like to speak to the Board of Overseers currently? Join us.
I'm Beverly Crowfoot. I live here in Bayside, and I'm here representing the Bayside Historical Preservation Society. We are in the position where we're planning to hire 1 or 2 summer interns to catalog the several collections of postcards that we have been given, and that person or persons may be using this room when it's not otherwise occupied, and or the storage room office that we have next door. And I hope that's agreeable with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You want to look at, instead of your job?
You want
I'm going to quit my job and take the internship.
I would like that. That's my kind of job.
I don't think we can afford you.
Is that happening this summer, or?
Yes.
Wow, great.
Do you need applications? Or do you have people in mind already?
Certainly, we consider having more. Perhaps some of you are aware that John Dykstra gave us his extensive, numerous collection of postcards. Heretofore, I've done that cataloging, and I've reached the point where I'm out of steam. So we're getting those young kids in.
Yeah, great, thank you.
By the way, the postcard that we used on Dan's site on July 4th of the 3 girls running, that came, a postcard running up the hill in Ruggles Park, took my breath away, and it was just such an evocation of Bayside of times gone by. Lovely. Anyone else?
Not to detract from
Yes.
your collection, but we do have that postcard also.
I know, Joe, I've asked Joe Mordio on that one. Anybody else like to address us now, or at the end of the meeting? Okay, hearing now, we're going to move forward. I've got a few additional items I threw in here. Bayside Arts, Mr. Woolsey, I believe you'd like to talk to us.
Hold on a second, I think they want to say something now.
Oh, I apologize.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if we were formally invited or we're supposed to speak on our own.
No, so in other words, that's an open invitation. And if someone's going to speak, they have to speak
Okay.
now forever. Not forever hold their peace, but you'll get to that.
Until the end.
end of the meeting.
All
All
right.
right, you have 2 opportunities. You can talk now, you can talk in about 20 minutes when the meeting's at.
We'll be happy to speak
What did
now.
you say, 20
So to
minutes?
speak.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, my name is Eric Hine. So I am the founder and also the president of Northport Farms, currently working in this area. So we thought we'd take the opportunity to come down and just share some information about the project that you probably know about this morning. So first of all, I'd just like to say that we brought some information over that people can look at. These are from some of the scientific institutions in Maine about the project. It might be interesting for you to look at it, to understand what this is about. And in the end, I think this sort of maybe gives some background on the project. I assume you've all read about it and discussed it, as I understand. So just a little bit of background on the whole company that I wanted to share with you. So I founded this company 5 years ago. Basically gave up a corporate career to do this. And why did I do that? It's because I saw our international community that has a growing food challenge ahead of us in the coming decades. And seafood is a very important part of that challenge in terms of how we address our future basic food supply internationally and the U.S. And also struggling wild fisheries, international community and also in the U.S. And then also looking at how aquaculture has had challenges with fish escape, parasites, excessive nutrient discharge and everything. That's really the basis for the founding of this company. Doing things in a different way, in a cleaner way, in a way that you can go in and produce fish in a totally different environmental profile that you've seen historically. So today we have 3 farms in Europe, 2 in Denmark, 1 in Norway. They've been recognized by the European Commission, Danish Environmental Ministry, and also Innovation Norway as green projects. and also received awards for that in Europe. And so the process here has been a lengthy one, which you probably noticed. So we've been working on the project in Belfast that's now going into permitting for almost a year and a half. Spent a lot of time and resources trying to make this a project that's a good fit for the communities out here. And we've also subjected the projects to external peer reviews among the most respected environmental organizations in Maine. And you will find their letters in here commenting our permit applications and such. So today we are 9 employees in Maine. So we developed as a company here. We are 55 in total. So the other 45 are in Europe. They work closely together and also with many experts here. And I think probably this project has had 30, 40 people involved in the past year to develop it.
Can I ask a
Yeah.
question? Do you have other installations in the United States? Excuse me, in the United States?
This is our first one here.
Okay.
So the company was started in Norway, and we are in 2 countries there. And for me personally, it's gratifying because I'm born in this region. So it's kind of like returning home in a sense. I'm a dual citizen. And it was, we've seen, great support all over Maine for the project. We understand that there also have been some that don't agree with the project, and I respect that. But I would say, I think a lot of your questions come out of the communities here. A lot of your questions. I guess my frustration is perhaps some of the attempts at answering the questions locally have not exactly been what we feel representing the science that is also supported by institutions in Maine. So what we just try to do is to put out information on a continuous basis about the project. So we do that on our Facebook page, Horticultural Farms Maine. I don't know how many from the community has been able to be to our information meetings. We've had quite a few over the past year. But in the end, I would think this community, and the concern here is what does it mean for Bayside, right? Does it have an impact on Bayside? Will it affect our property values and so on? I would assume maybe these are the kind of questions that are being asked. I think in the end, when you look at what this material has been put through, of external peer reviews and everything, and it's something that I've emphasized that is important for us because we want to have a project that works for the communities we're in. We are a long-term member of the communities we're in. My clear answer is I see no material impacts for this community. And you can also read it out in the materials here. But we are open for input and questions. And, we will listen to those. If there's anything more we can do in terms of concerns in Bayside, we are happy to listen and also work with the community here. But again, from everything we've done and all the reviews we've gotten back from the experts, we have not seen any impacts on this community based upon the materials we have.
Just curious, how did you select this area for this massive farm? I mean, it's not like we're on the, main road.
Well, we spent actually...
Road one. Road number one. Road number one.
Well, actually, it was a lengthy process, actually. We did search all the way from BC up to the Canadian border with the environmental experts in terms of looking at the various options along the coastline. I probably worked 20 sites, mostly in Maine. And there's a lot of criteria that needs to come together to have a good location. It's a combination of, well, first of all, a constructible site that has access to seawater and fresh water. It's a matter of having a location where you can actually hire staff and attract staff. So for example, we could have gone far north in Maine. The challenge there is really to be able to attract staff to some of those locations. We have biologists, engineers, administrative staff, a lot of different types of positions. Many of them will be from this area, and some of the experts we need to bring in. And of course, also the combination of dialogues with many stakeholders in the beginning concerning the options and recommendations that we were listening to as well. So it's a combination of many things where and then also the water district saw this as an opportunity to upgrade their infrastructure as a part of this deal, which also goes into Northport, which has been in great need of upgrading. So this deal sort of helps the water district do some of that work also financially. So there's like a lot of things that came together in a way that seemed to work.
Mike, could you pass around, are there X number of,
So I can put it up here, just put it up, I don't know if there's anything I can leave it.
sure, I just want to make sure that the overseers have an opportunity to take
So
one.
what I have in there is letters of recommendation from the Gulf of Maine Research Institute, the Atlantic Salmon Federation, and CLF, the Conservation Foundation. I also have in there a slide showing that Northport, there's been some concern about groundwater, showing that the Bayside is not even in the area that would have a slight drawback.
Would have a lot.
Drawback on the groundwater level. It also shows that really nobody will lose water. But this area is not even in the area that might have a slight drawdown. It also speaks a little bit about the discharge, which I know somebody's been asking about here. So it's understood exactly what that is. We do treat that extensively. So for example, if we've got a question, will stuff wash up on a beach? Well, the particle content in that discharge is lower than the background boundary in the bay, just so people understand that. We take out enormous amounts of very, very small particles. So, and
May I ask another question?
yeah,
Will the proposed facility operate in the same fashion as the European facilities? Is it a replication, or is it a replication with modifications?
okay, so it's a good question, right? So what we've done basically is we've built these facilities step for step, and basically developed and improved step by step. So each step is gone up in scale, and each step has basically been improved as we go along. So, and that's the benefit we have. We're the only really company with 3 farms in operation today in this industry. We're not by far the biggest one. In Florida, they're building one 8 times bigger than the one proposed here. But this is generally a part of the development industry. This technology is used by the entire net pen industry, by the way, also. All salmon start their life in these facilities. So they've been in operation for 20 years. They're just developing, so to speak.
Eric, you're president or head of currently the 2 farms that are in Europe, is that correct?
I was chairman and CEO in Norway.
Right.
When I moved to the U.S., I gave up the home in Norway.
Right.
So I'm no longer in charge of those. I'm in charge of the U.S. now.
So you would be the responsible person here for this facility?
Yes,
Understood. Thank you.
that's correct. That's correct.
So the one in Florida, is that a salmon facility?
Yeah. Can you believe it? Salmon in Florida.
So there's been a lot of discussion about how we need to go out to a certain point here to get the cold water out of the bay.
Yeah.
They don't have cold water in Florida. What's up with that?
Good point. They have a huge aquifer.
Oh, is that,
All
okay,
over-
so it's
all
all
over
fresh water.
Florida.
Okay.
It's brackish, so actually, what they're actually doing in Florida, they're pumping out water from deep down, and then they're pumping their discharge back in the ground. It's an interesting one.
That's our issue.
I don't think
That farm is-
environmental.
I would have
Well, I was just curious about the temperature thing, because
I would
that's
have-
one of the things.
That's their issue, not ours.
I have two comments to that. Number one, I would be concerned because their level of treatment is much lower than ours because they're not discharging into any waters. The other one is their power use because of temperatures. But that farm is set to be 220,000 metric tons in Florida. So I've been asking myself, who do you buy salmon from, Maine or Florida? I mean, I think branding-wise, Maine has a strong advantage.
Jeffrey, you had a question?
No.
Dick?
I had a comment, and I understand the background that you've gone through, and the studies and the experts that you've had, but major ecological disasters, and I think that's what we're concerned about here, Chernobyl, Exxon Valdez, are due to people errors, people being stupid. And I don't see any way you can prevent that. And personally, it's a not in my backyard type of thing. I don't want to see the bay go to hell and my investment in properties here go to hell. And I'm afraid it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's not in my backyard.
I respect that. If you look at the type of, you might say, negative impacts of this type of production that you've seen historically, I mean, I think the biggest one is fish escape from the pens. So if you look at what we have set up here, it's not possible for fish to escape. Those are probably the biggest impacts that we've seen from aquaculture for the most part. So, but I respect your opinion. Everybody can't agree, I understand that.
Judy?
I have a question about your background. You said that you've been doing this for 5 years?
No, more like 10 years now,
Okay,
yes,
so only 10 years.
yes.
And my comment, my
That's
question
not
then
10
is,
years of operation.
Right.
That's 10 years of your business.
I'm an
Right.
operator,
Right.
so I'm not an
But in
operator.
terms
right?
of company and business, it's not 10 years.
My job is to build companies with the people.
But did you mean how long has the company been doing it?
right, how long has this experience been with this guy at the helm? He
Right.
mentioned 5 years ago he decided to do this.
Well, the company was started, I was working with it before then. Because my job is to hire people with long track record. So for example, our latest employee town, he has worked with this type of production for 25 years.
And then the second question I had was, what investigation have you made of any of just disposing of the waste without dumping it into the sea? What other opportunities have you looked at, like a septic system, like trucking it away somewhere?
Sure.
Why does it have to go in the bay?
Well, to make it clear, the waste does not go in the bay. So we have the 99% particle removal, and we remove almost all nutrients 99%. So what happens to this is, and this is common for these type of farms, it's all taken out in the so-called wastewater system. It's dewatered to become a sludge, and it's high in nutrients, so it can be used in fertilizer, biogas. There's many applications for it. So it's really a recycling process where you take the nutrients, recycle them, and put them to use other places. And this is quite common for these kind of farms. Yeah.
Lee?
Would local farmers be able to have access to the,
Yes. So what we have a number of different partners, also composting partners and various types of players that we have intention agreements with to be able to develop these kind of products. And the good thing is they'll get a steady supply so they can have a steady business operation with the whole input from us. So this is sealed in airtight containers. So we basically maintain the quality of the product, the sludge product, and then it's shipped out with tank trucks and delivered directly to the party that we're working with.
Michael?
Yeah, I've been to a number of your hearings in Belfast. One of the things, and I've heard, I know you have you're proud of the claim that the water is very clean when you put it back in that thing. So I've never heard an answer to the question, why not just put it back with the fish?
Well, we do that a lot. So this is a recycling system. So we recycle the water continuously. So it's only a very small fraction that's exchanged.
But how much on a daily basis?
It's about 1% of tank volume per hour. So the other 99% is continuously recycled in the system.
So how much on a, how many,
What's that?
yeah, what's the gallon?
7.7 million gallons a day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's when the facility is fully developed. And most of that water is seawater coming from the bay, being treated, and then returned to the bay.
We've given about 15 minutes to this, and
I don't know.
I just,
when is the public meeting occurring?
Here, at the 15th, isn't there a meeting July 15th? Upstairs?
that's upstream.
That's upstream, that's a different organization. But
The other side.
Well, hopefully the same facts.
I appreciate the quality of this conversation. I'm just noting that it could go on for quite a while.
But don't we have to allow the participants
Yeah.
in the room to pose their questions?
I think it's okay.
I don't know,
I'm fine with that.
I wanted to ask about employment opportunities.
Yeah.
How many people do you expect to employ?
When we're done, so this is a multi-phase project. So currently we have 9, about to hire a 10th. When we go into phase 1, we will have about 60 people.
60?
60 people,
Yes.
yes. And by the time the project is fully expanded, we'll be minimum 100 people.
Are those full-time employees
We only have full-time,
with benefits,
Yes.
all 100?
yes. So all with good benefits, good packages. So one of the, at least benefits we have, we come from a Norwegian background with sort of a strong benefits culture. So that's part of our long-term thinking. We invest in our people. We have to train them, and it's really important for us to train them and keep them happy.
Good.
And they make us good as well.
John?
I've seen maps of the water intake and outlet, and the map that I've seen shows the outlet right off the Bayside dock, not very far out. Why can't that be extended down the bay, or why couldn't it be put out into deeper water?
Yeah, so the sort of discharge point was set last October. So there is a map also included in this package if you're interested on that as well. It's been set based upon all the assessments from main experts. We followed their advice after all the studies they did in the bay, everything. I think the important thing about the discharge point is that the residual discharge there goes to background valley very quickly because we removed so much of the nutrients. So in terms of your shorelines here, nobody has seen any impacts. And we've also used eelgrass as the most sensitive receptors in the study, and it also shows no impact. So we've done everything we can to really be sensitive about the interest here. Taking it further out, the studies didn't really show any benefit that we went through. And it would mean putting more pipe in the bay without really getting an impact and benefit back from doing so.
Okay, and then the second question is,
Sorry.
It's okay.
given the sophistication of water treatment plants in the country, why does anything that's other than completely clean water have to go back? Not 1%, but completely clean, have to go back into the bay? Why can't that be taken out?
Yeah, because there's always a slight small residual, for example, nitrogen, that is very difficult to get out. So you have some exchange to make sure that you can maintain a steady level. So in our case, we remove 85% of the nitrogen continuously in the system, which is very high compared to other wastewater systems in the US. But there's always a small residual, and that's why we need a small exchange on the water, basically.
Okey-doke.
I just want to follow up on Michael's question on.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Just the one question on the daily volume and the temperature of
Yeah.
the discharge.
Yeah. So the daily volume, so it will be in phases, but eventually it will go up to the volume we just talked about. So
Which was, I didn't hear.
7.7 million.
7 point,
Okay.
which is mostly seawater coming from the bay going back to the bay, basically. So what the real question regarding that is, what does the water contain? That's what should be the concern, right? And that's why we have information in this and our application about the contents. The temperature, we've also addressed this. So if you look at the volume of water, even though it sounds large, it's very small compared to the volume of the bay. So it's very clear that there's no temperature impact from this discharge.
But the temperature will be,
It will vary a little bit through the year. Depends on the water temperature of the intake water. But it would be a few degrees higher than the background value of the bay.
every day.
Yeah, but it will vary a
I'm
little bit.
just noting, guys, that we've given 20 minutes to this. We have a very full meeting in front of us, so I'm happy to keep taking questions. The overseers should note that the more questions we take, the longer this meeting is. A lot of warrants and other stuff in front of us.
Can we set
It's great that they're here, we can ask these questions.
I understand that. I'm just noting that perhaps we set a time limit and say that's 5 more minutes, okay? Back there, Mr. Webster.
To help alleviate your time pressure, why not ask them to have a public presentation or hearing here in Bayside? About a month ago, the overseer sent a letter to the Department of Agriculture I assume you saw that letter, asking for a public hearing. They've had a lot of public hearings, but it's been when most of our residents aren't around. And we have Upstream Watch making a presentation tomorrow. Why not invite them in to make their own presentation at some point and answer public questions?
A, the public meeting that was mentioned is not one that we called, that was being called by the state of Maine. And B, that this is up to the overseers. They would like to.
You're talking about two different things. You're
Right.
talking about the formal hearing.
Formal
and he's
hearing,
talking
a
about
public meeting.
people having a meeting and
Yes,
discussing the project.
So it's not for me to decide, it's for the overseers to determine.
Well, we have a policy, and tell me if I'm wrong, but that anybody can rent the hall as long as it's available.
A
So
resident can rent the hall.
that's not-
And so I would encourage you to find someone who would like to have it to use the hall and pay the fees.
A non-resident can rent the hall, but it needs overseer's approval, which is generally not a
Right.
problem. So what they're saying is, if you'd like to do a formal presentation, that option is open to you.
Upstairs.
Or if somebody
I
that
make a
wants to
motion
advocate for you.
That if they want to do a presentation upstairs.
I think
that
they've
we-
been given that information.
Right?
Yeah,
Oh, you're-
Mandy's giving
All
them
right,
all
great.
that.
Okay, so we don't need to make a motion.
Right, when they want to do one, they can pay the fee and as soon as we approve it.
To preserve his right, should he request that permission during this meeting so that he has permission?
We need a date, and we need some information.
We can give them the
There's a
most
procedure to go.
Okay,
Right.
But if
it's,
you want-
it's just your next meeting will be after
Yeah.
everybody leaves for the summer, so
Right.
that process won't work.
We're happy to come back and give more depth. Obviously, there was very little time now, so we're happy to do
I
that.
do think that's a good idea, because
Yeah,
all the
this is
concerns
something
has
also.
been that all of this got rolling last fall when everyone was gone.
Yeah.
All the hearings, it was,
Mandy
and
has
it's not.
provided you the information before, we encourage you to get it again.
Yeah.
I would make a motion that, subject to availability and the payment of the fees, if the community hall is available on the date they'd like to do it, and if they pay their fees, that they be allowed to do that.
Second.
Yeah, that's great.
You capturing this?
That's what I wanted to do. Good.
Any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor? So, your conversation is now with Mandy about available times upstairs. There's a nominal fee, I believe. And pending availability, you're allowed to rent the hall upstairs to have a public meeting.
And can I say one thing?
Please.
Okay, well, one suggestion is we could talk about some of that groundwater stuff that some of the residents here are concerned about.
Absolutely. If you see the map attached there, also shows that Bayside is way outside the area. It's in there. And one final question I have is, obviously, Bayside has decided to file an intervenor to the DP. Are you doing this because you're an interested party and concerned party, or are you doing this as an opponent?
No, as an interested and concerned party.
Okay.
We haven't taken a formal stance.
This board has been assiduous in gathering information and not weighing in yet.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's been our position.
Very good job. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from Bayside residents or meeting attendees?
Thank you, thanks.
Now, Mr. Woolsey, Bayside Arts, I believe you have something to talk to us about. Sorry, what? Oh, I was just going to say.
So I'm John Woolsey, I'm president of Bayside, and I'm the president of Bayside Arts. I sent a letter to the overseers, have you all read it?
Yes.
It's sent out to everybody.
Everybody's read it? Okay. So,
When was it?
It was sent by me about 2 weeks ago to all the overseers, and I'm seeing some nodding heads around the table, so some
I
people did
failed
their
to read
homework.
it, and it's my own fault.
it's fairly short, I'm going to read it so that everybody's on the same page. Can I do that?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Sure.
Okay. In response to your message to the overseers that the overseers want to have a stage set removed between our events, I have tried to find volunteers to do that and have not been successful. As some of you know, I have been treated, I'm being treated for an issue with my left foot, and I'm using a cane and a crutch to get around, and my own mobility is, at least for the summer, highly compromised. Thus, I'm not able to do the work myself as I have in the past. Our board consists of mostly somewhat older volunteers who seem to have an aversion to ladders. Earlier this spring, Bill Cressy hired a couple of people to take down the most visible panels but our budget won't support hiring them several times each season to take them down and put them up. So at this time, I would like to suggest a compromise to get us through the remainder of the 2019 season. Our 6 events being held at the community hall this year, not counting the kids' art classes in the meeting room. It is only the last 4, July 21st, 28th, August 4th, and August 9th, a period of just under 3 weeks, that will use the stage. The communications with artists for those programs included pictures of the hall with the set in place. They are expecting to perform on the stage with the set, and we would not want to jeopardize our relationship with those groups by failing to deliver what we advertise. I request that we be allowed to set up our set the day of the first event, July 21st, and strike it the day of the day after the last event, August 10th. At that point, we will store it, restoring the stage to its bare appearance. Then, at the August Overseers meeting, I would like to explore with the Overseers a solution to creating a more professional-looking stage presentation that will satisfy both the needs of Bayside Arts in the future and the Overseers' desire that the stage be left unadorned. I have some thoughts on that, which I look forward to discussing with you. So, I want permission to put it up, leave it there for 3 weeks, and then take it down.
Overseers, questions? Mike?
We talked about this over the winter, and this was very clear that this was the way it needed to be. And, you know, the thing you're talking about doing in August is what we wanted to do last winter. And I think we decided that it needs to come down because of other people who use it. And I hate saying it because I love the Bayside Arts thing. So, and it's nothing personal. It's just that that's the feeling that had been going on. I mean, I think you could probably find some teenagers that you could hire for short money to help you take it down and store it. And we talked about where it could go and all kinds of things like that. And I just think it could be done. So, but then again, I see what he's saying too. So it's a balance there.
Sure. I've been unsuccessful. I'm going to be out of town from this Wednesday through the 29th, so I'm out of the picture.
There are other members of Bayside Arts who perhaps could take on that responsibility?
We don't have a huge membership. Most of them are older. I have asked around to see if I can find people that do this. I'm coming up blank.
I think that I share Mike's expressed frustration, and I think others' unexpressed frustration, that this has not just been a one-year conversation, this has been a couple-year conversation. But we are a small community that is trying very hard to make all of the wonderful pieces work. Because of what you said in that letter, which I apologize for not reading earlier, and the impression that your performers have that they will have a set, I will accept this. I think each of us need to reach out to the kids we know. I get that you're older, I'm older. Talk to Lisa, talk to the Junior Yacht Club, see what we can do to help you find people for next year, for the fall. But this has got to be it, because this has been a 3-year conversation since you did this wonderful thing, creating Bayside Arts where nobody else would. We've been talking about that set, and we need to get it down.
Okay. Very little of this conversation has come back to me in the last couple of years. When we first got our grant to build the set, we received a letter from Joe Huntoon at the time saying that we could install the set on the stage. There was never any discussion that it had to come down between presentations. And the letter that we got this winter is the first letter that I have ever received saying you've got to take this down between performances.
Steve?
So I was an overseer at the time this was taking place. Judy was here, Dick was here, and Lee was here. My recollection, which I don't think is flawed, is that Bayside Arts committed to take the stuff down after every performance and store it and put it back up for every performance. That's my recollection. I see some people shaking heads. if that was the original agreement, I understand the challenges, I understand the problems. If I were still an overseer, my comment would be, Bayside Arts made a commitment to us several years ago that they have not yet lived up to. And it's time for that to be corrected. So, and I'm not an overseer, but that's my recollection of the
I-
A
situation.
lot of hands around the table. Jeff?
I have 2 teenage sons who have lots of friends. I think we could help with this. I mean,
I think standing outside at the dock for half an hour in the afternoon, you find most of the kids.
Oh, I teenager, oh, yeah. I
Vicky?
mean, I think that's wishful thinking, and I agree, and I'm not gonna be an old person, you know, disparaging the youth. I think, but yeah, but really. I have been here in many conversations. I agree with Judy. We err on the side of kindness and consideration at this point, with the understanding that if amends can be made for the next few, if Jeffrey Burke will take on another challenging opportunity, and then we move forward. That's good.
Michael?
I agree. I think it's 3 weeks, even though there was a precedent of a vote taken whenever in a commitment or, I mean, I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill, frankly. And Jeffrey, I mean, I can help find people or whatever.
Yeah.
Mike?
Okay, so it's-
I guess you said, could you talk about the dates of those performances during that cycle? You said,
it's the 3 weeks,
It's
the 3 in a row.
July 21st, 28th, August 4th, August 9th. So it's, the first 3 are Sunday nights, the last one's a Friday night. So, you know, all told, it's a day less than,
And it would come down after the
it
August 9th?
would come down on,
So by the annual meeting, it would be down, which is on the 13th of August.
If we can get
and
the kids.
then I want to discuss some solution which does not require the use, the kinds of programs we have been doing have changed somewhat. And the original plan, reason to have a set was that we were planning on hosting more theater. That has not panned out for a whole lot of reasons. And so the thought is that after this year, we'll take it down, we'll store it, it'll be there if it needs to be used for something in the future, but we want to come up with another solution which does not require hiring people every week to take things up and put things down, and will satisfy the desires of those people in the community who want to see the community hall in its bare state.
Michael?
Can I ask that we move on this quickly? Because I think we're going to talk this one to death.
Right.
It's not worthy.
Then Mike?
yeah, just as the chair of the infrastructure committee, Billy and I met with Bill Cresson, and we were assured that this was going to happen this year. And, I mean, I understand the community and doing it all. It's just, it's frustrating because we spent all that time talking about how it could be taken apart and everything, and how it could be stored, where it could be stored, and here we are again. And we're talking about the exact thing that we didn't want, which was a Sunday night, 6 days of everybody looking at the thing, and then another performance. And then 6 days of looking at it. That was exactly what we discussed. So that's all I'm saying.
Understood. Do we want to take a vote on this? Do we need a vote? Another motion?
I think we do need a motion because our last instruction was that it be taken down. So I move that the request of Bayside Arts to leave the set, to install the set, because right now it's down, and leave it up until August 9th, be allowed.
Through August 9th.
Through August 9th.
Into August.
Be allowed last time, just like I'm gonna warn you kids one more time.
I'm going to turn this car around.
And that then we also, this part, well, that's the motion.
Is there a second to that motion? Lee? Any further discussion?
The only thing I want to say is, and then we owe it to Bayside Arts to find the kids who are going to help give me, and I can climb a ladder a little bit. I will be there the day you're taking it down. Let me know. I'll even take it
Putting it
down.
up, sorry. You want to put it up?
I won't be here.
Vicki?
Okay, I want to end this on a really positive note. When I started, the community hall was used maybe 6 times in that particular summer, and I think Bayside Arts has done a tremendous amount of work and should be
Yes.
highly commended for the variety of performances that they've brought to the community, the work they've done, the struggle financially.
Yes.
And our community hall, which is highly valued and on the historic registry, National Historic Registry, you know, is being used for the purpose that it was built for. And I think that's really wonderful, and it warms my heart.
Let me make one comment. I cut a hole under the stage. I don't know if you was aware.
It's hidden by that piano.
The piano is plugged in the hole, but that Bill Cressy asked me to open it up so they could store the stuff under it.
Correct.
But there's still a lot of work to be done. We've got to put doors on that hole. We've got to build a cart that we can actually get stuff under the stage with. There's a lip of flooring that stops right after the hole that has to be, there has to be a way of doing it.
John, so it seems clear that Bayside Arts as an organization is the wonderful events that Vicki refers to that occur up there on the stage, and it is the physical infrastructure and the toing and froing to make all that happen. And you guys have to figure out that second part. You got the first part down. People love the events you put on there. Getting it all together and taking it all down, that's another issue. And if everybody is aging, you need to find then that may have to redefine what Bayside Arts is. That said, all in favor of Judy's motion? That's 6 and what? All opposed? Abstaining? 1 abstaining, Mr. Lang. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Personnel HR Committee, I know it's a topic that has come up here appropriately so that we need to create one. I'm going to make a proposal that we move that to our August meeting, which will actually be after the annual meeting, and let the new board establish that committee, because I think it's appropriate to do that. There'll be people around the table, among other things. So that's my proposal on that. Posting of open overseers positions on village boards and websites. We actually have the nominating committee here, or at least its chair, Blair. And this is a question that had come up with an issue, which is just that we're making available to the village residents opportunities to nominate themselves or others for open overseer positions. And so do we need to put together a sheet and give it to Dan also to let people know that there are open positions?
Are there any,
There are open positions.
are there anybody,
There are two people.
candidates, is what I'm worried about. Are there any candidates at this point?
That's for Mr., I don't know.
Are there any candidates at this point?
Not yet.
Well, well,
Mike?
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
so I would do it again. It's
Yeah.
just too, but I haven't really been asked.
Right, there's two
Right.
positions that'll be voted on, and Jeffrey has said that he would be happy to be nominated for a 3-year term. So
Right.
nominate him.
And for the record, Brock has said he is not.
Right.
Correct. So we actually have technically one open position, and I'm just saying that I think that I do know that in years past, we have not been on the ball in terms of letting people know about this. So I am happy to put that sheet together, Mandy. I think it exists somewhere in the system, and just make sure it gets up. Dan?
Oh, sorry.
The sheet's already been put together,
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Lee, did you have?
John,
Wait,
the
first Dan.
sheet's already been put together, the nominating committee has seen it and reviewed it, so it's ready to go out. 2 overseers and the treasurer, or clerk, I think, or what are up for.
Can that be forwarded to Mandy so we can just get it up?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Clerk?
Lee, was there a question?
Well, it's just the 3-year term.
So we need to fill
Oh, what's other-
this term. We need to fill Lee's term as well, even though he's not, his term technically doesn't expire.
So you need someone to fill out the end of the term.
So it's 3 instead of 2, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
So can I ask a question? A basic
I
question?
got my hand up too, that's what I wanted. It just isn't.
You already asked a question, Bernadette.
Go ahead, Vicki.
How is it that you would like this to take? What form would you like this to take? If I am aware of people that might be interested, should they contact you, or should I give you their name and you contact them? What is your preference? You'll contact them, okay.
I have a much more basic question. Who is on the nominating committee besides Blair?
Bill Cressy.
Just the two of you?
Which has sufficed in the past.
Well, I have no idea. I just think of it as Blair. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, it's
It
been.
had been Heidi von Bergen, but she stepped aside.
Can you tell me when Lee's term expires?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me that.
Yeah, I was
He was elected for 2 years.
I have,
Mandy has
I
that.
have a sheet thing.
Was he elected last year for 2 years? I can figure it out then. So
Yes.
He's got 1 year left.
Everybody was elected.
Minus one,
Math was.
Okay.
so there'll be one person
You're filling
finishing
in for
that term.
Wendy, whose
The other
term
two will be
ends this
3
year.
years.
So Lee's term, so there's 1 year left on Lee's term, so that will be a 1-year position.
So I'm filling what's left of Wendy's.
1 year.
And we'll be starting a new
We'll
term
start a 3-year term.
under your own name with the gold plate.
If
If
allowed.
elected.
If
If
allowed.
elected.
If nominated.
I understand there's a recall.
Yes, exactly.
You might lose the team.
There's some diggies
You
that.
may lose the ticket.
Okay,
Keep that under the wire.
moving right along. I want to report on the July 7th, as you recall, Lee wasn't able to be here, but we had an emergency meeting of the Board of Overseers. Just want to report on that publicly. That emergency meeting was held as an emergency meeting because the board was being asked to act on something before today's meeting. There was a deadline 2 days ago. And that was a meeting referred to by Mr. Heim earlier for the Board of Overseers to assume intervenor status in the upcoming public meeting or meetings that will be occurring on the Nordic Aqua Farms project. And it was a very quick meeting. There was a motion by Judy to ask for intervenor status. It was unanimous among the 6 who attended that meeting. A letter was written subsequently and sent to the appropriate agencies, and so we now have intervenor status, which means that we can ask questions in advance, we can receive materials at any public meetings or hearings. Am I correct?
That's correct. And we can participate in the schedule.
Just make the scheduling of those meetings.
And I also understand, but I think we have to send a representative to keep our status. So we'll just have to talk about that.
I was asked by Bill to talk about the old stairs upstairs. And Bill, can you?
I believe the stairs that are under the stage are the old stairs that went to the projection booth. Bayside Arts or somebody representing Bayside Arts wanted to get them out from under the stage so they could get their stuff under there.
So something has to be done with those stairs.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to keep them? Do you want to, what do you want to do?
Get rid of them.
Throw him in the dump.
Do they have any historical value?
Fire.
Put it in projection.
Right, so what are your thoughts?
I mean, we don't
No,
have
there's no value, keep them, get rid of them, trash.
Do these stairs not lead to anything anymore that we can use? In other words, we can't use them.
No, there's the old projection booth, and they aren't architecturally significant.
No.
Looking at Beverly to make sure that we don't.
I have not seen them, so
I think they're essentially a
They're
ladder.
art
So
You want to go look at them with me after and we can talk about it? Because if we don't want them, then,
I'm sure.
the only reason we keep them would be you'd say we should keep them.
yeah.
If you
Right?
move the
Right.
piano, they're very obvious.
It's right below, it's in the hole.
Okay. I don't think we need a motion on this. I think, Bill, it's
Take care of it.
up to you to take care of it. Thank you. I mistakenly at the bottom of my, of new and continuing business regarding the dates for the August meeting, and thank you, Dick, for correcting me, which is the system that we've moved into now, is that we not have a meeting before the annual meeting, but that we have a meeting after the annual meeting. So in fact, rather than our next meeting being Sunday, August 11th, it will be with the new Board of Overseers on Sunday, the 18th. And I'll talk again to Mr. Martin, who's the principal at Drinkwater School. We've had a couple of years of meetings there. They've been happening. No? You don't want to
Well, I don't think we need to do that.
Rather not?
I'd rather not. I think that, that the acoustic support, I think it asks the villagers to go even further. We love to have attendance.
Right.
It was great the first year because we wanted to see what our tax dollars went through the school and support that wonderful little school, but I don't think we need to do that anymore.
Easy for me. Then I do
But I
know,
still want to meet.
we will have that meeting. That'll be on the 18th. And I will note that we will have a brief meeting here just immediately preceding the annual meeting. Annual meeting starts at 6:30, so that's usually around 6 o'clock. I beg your pardon?
The date again?
The date again is the 13th, it's written at the bottom of the page there. The annual meeting is on Tuesday, August 13th, and we're going to have one at like 6, just before it, because it's always good to go over the rules of the road. Tim Samway helps us with that, who's going to be our moderator. Thank you, Tim. I believe he's hiding in the back there behind the pole. And
If nominated and elected.
exactly, it's always good just so everybody understands what's going to be occurring at the annual meeting. So that's a very brief one. So you have to show up here just a little before you would otherwise show up. Okay. One last note is that we received a note from Mike Lannon with these agendas, and Mike was asking if a draft version of the agenda could go out upon which the overseers could comment. So I just want to talk about how this process occurs, which is, to be honest, an improvement upon what was occurred with President's Past, which is that 2 weeks prior, we have a meeting, 2 weeks later, which is 2 weeks prior to the next meeting, I send out a request for comment for addition to the agenda. I give people, usually, if we can pull this off right, and July 4th messed it up this year, a full week to get back to me with any agenda items. I then give that to Mandy and to Dan to post so that it's out a week in advance of the meeting. To ask to send a draft agenda out would probably push that back a week earlier, which would mean, frankly, we end a meeting, and a week later I'm asking for agenda items for the next meeting, which I kind of think is, to me, a little more than enough. So I'm always happy to take additions to the agenda on the spot, and frequently, because Steve has some and others have some, we can always add to the agenda on the spot. I'm a little apprehensive about sending out drafts of agendas, but I'm open for discussion among the overseers.
I agree.
Mike?
I don't understand why you can't just send out a final draft, and if nobody has any comments in a couple of hours, it just goes final. I don't understand. I
think it's make work. I think it also is one more invitation for one more email string that we shouldn't be engaged in. I don't think there's nothing on this that should create conversation. These are the committee reports we expect to have. These are the sort of things we should be worrying about. So I like the way you do it, and it is an improvement. Thank you.
I'm good with it.
I'm good with it.
Thank you.
Only one.
Report of the treasurer.
Well, good morning, everyone. Here are some warrants. They are not complete. You'll find that you're missing CMP invoices and a variety of other things. We continue to try to refine the process to make sure you have everything you need. I provided everybody with a non-commented version of financials, which I printed off this morning. My apologies, but my time's been consumed with a host of other things. I will get you a commented copy. There are no major shocks, but there are two recurring themes. One is road budget, one is safety budget. So on the road budget, with the amount of runoff we've had, we're very close to being exhausted at this point. And that's fine. We have contingency funds that could be used against that. I think we have about $7,000 plus in contingency available. So just so you have that on your radar. I had made a comment, I think at the last meeting, that there was $5,000 in additional spending for safety, but that is not going to cover all the variances in place. So the overseers said we want to expand our police coverage, we're going to approve $5,000. We have had significant additional expenses not related to wages, which is fine. You guys have got to figure out, you guys, I guess, start with Bill and the Safety Committee, is that are there things that you are willing to do or can do with schedules to reduce the spending we're going to have at the wage level to make budget by the end of the year? Or do you wish to approach the overseers for some additional funding? Keeping in mind, we still have about $7,000 in contingency that could be used there. Given the way roads are going, and I'm here to tell you that in 11 years or so of doing this, I've never seen spring runoff like what we've had.
Yeah.
So we've never been at this point budget-wise. It's always been plenty of money. We may have run out at year end. We're out in July, which is unheard of. So I would still encourage, you all responsible for safety to figure out where you stand. Road-wise, we're basically done. Let's see, what else? So our accounting firm, this has been really interesting. I think we have some very, very talented people working with us in Connecticut. They have some new systems which were causing us a little bit of angst. Because it's a much larger company, some automatic payroll feeds that we're using aren't in use because they're trying to get the IT department to approve the use of Bangor Savings Evolution software, which is where those feeds come from. Nuisances is really what they are. They just create some extra work for Mandy and some extra work for me. And unfortunately, they had a young lady by the name of Kirslin, who was a supervisor, who took over our account, managed us through it. My last comment was things are going really quite well. She's now transitioned to another group. And unfortunately, in any transition, there are things we do once a year. The information doesn't get passed along, or there are discussions that take place on their end, and they're completely clear on what they were going to do. We get a note that suggests that we need to intervene. And maybe we do, maybe we don't. On top of that are multiple check runs for things that were not part of the original plan. So the way that we pay bills has worked very, very well. Because of the runoff, we've had a whole bunch of additional expenses where we wanted to cut the checks for Brown's excavation sooner than we normally would. So none of this is the end of the world or earth-shaking. It's just, frankly, a nuisance and difficult to deal with. So in terms of old business, we talked about the spending for safety. We purchased a new computer. We were approved for $1,000 in general government. It cost us about $350. So we're in really, really good shape there. The overseers approved an HSA contribution to the village agent's account. That has been completed. And in terms of new business, I made a decision to upgrade the internet here. It'll be installed on Friday the 19th. We had a 7 megabyte download, 2 megabyte upload system. Single line, old style DSL, and AOL said you could. And it just is not sufficient. We were trying to download Kusi and continually drop the connection, couldn't get the software downloaded to the new computer. That's unacceptable. So what I've done is approved an upgrade to a dual line, which is typically what they're doing now. Better stability, it's going to give us 40 megabytes of download and 2 megabytes of upload, $17 per month. Cheap money and the right thing to do. Should have done it quite some time ago. And the last piece is a request to let Bill purchase a chair for the office. We have one in there that tries to throw people on the floor. I see that as a safety hazard, and it's not a lot of money. You can get them on the savings for
Take it as
$200.
safety by there.
I've almost gone down 3 times, so it's just dangerous.
You're a big guy.
We make sure you get that one every time.
Thank you, you're very good. The other things that were on the agenda, and they don't necessarily need to be done right now, one of them is I asked a question about the public presentations for seawall options and when those are scheduled, because we had talked about doing multiple presentations. We're mid-July and we've done none. And so I hope that's part of infrastructure's comments. And we have the annual warrant complete. This has been a grueling process. We brought our bond counsel in to help us understand what our options are. So I don't have copies for everybody. I did email it to you, so Mike and Jeff, if you want to pull it up, you can. Judy has a copy. Judy and Tim have been my conscience. They reviewed it as we had requested before. They believe the warrants are good to go. So
I would make a motion that we, when you have a chance to look at this, that we approve this warrant for the annual meeting. We'll all then have to sign it,
Yep.
and it'll be posted.
Yep.
And
you
when
can
will the
sign-
signing occur?
Now,
It can occur now. I have a copy we can pass around. There's no significant changes. Some of
right,
the
changes that
the
we-
biggest changes are that we're going to ask the voters to approve spending for the seawall. But we won't be taking action on that until the next annual meeting. Or we may go forward with the bond and what have you, but there'll be additional warrants in 2020 that address some things we thought we needed to address in 2019.
We're approving at this annual meeting for next year's budget.
Yep.
So some of that money is needed for design work that should occur before the annual meeting in order to do the work in the fall.
Once a warrant is approved at this annual meeting, we can spend.
That's what I'm getting.
Right,
So
so
if
this includes the $1.6
Then we
million.
can figure out how
If
we
it's
spend it,
approved,
whether we borrow it or whatever at the time.
this gives you the flexibility you need to start the design. We will not likely be borrowing the 1.6 until later in the game.
And I just got a real clear clue that these meetings are important as Dan almost had a stroke in the back row back there. Because that's the first people have heard any number about what's going to be in the warrant and gets involved in the project. So, we need to get our act together and move forward. That's not a criticism, that's just a statement of where we are in the project and it needs to move along. So
We'll
we
talk about
understand
that.
it. Yeah.
Right, and we discussed it, there was the public meeting yesterday as to the what I like to say, the little building. And we did discuss that there would be a very hefty warrant item for to help preserve the little building and all the other infrastructure. So anyone Please come to every public meeting we're talking about, because we can give you some important information.
Mike?
I have some questions about safety. Steve, if you, can you go through
Hang on a
where,
second. I need to do those. Go ahead, Mike, I'm ready.
the statement about being way over, can you point to where we are way over here?
Well, there's some things I can't see, so I have no idea what you have for a schedule attached to wages and what that generates for cash. So that's blind to me. What I can tell you is that if you go to it's page 3 of the financials. Yep, police wages, $930. There was no money budgeted. Now, that $930 comes out of the $5,000 in theory, but I don't have visibility to how that works.
Why don't you? That's what I'm.
Why would I? I'm not involved. I do financial reporting.
So I
So-
think this is
so
what we
safety-
need, this is what we need to talk about, because this is the second meeting I've been at where this comes up. I don't have that transparency either. So this is what I want clarity on, as the person who's in charge of the safety committee, saying this in meetings, and then expecting that somebody else has it that you don't, or that Bill doesn't. I just like to be clear.
So
And if somebody can help me understand that.
I'll try. The
I appreciate
safety
that.
committee worked with our police officers and the lifeguards and the committee to determine what they wanted to schedule.
Right, and I was part of that.
Yep, so you have those numbers, I trust, or someone has those numbers, because that's what drove the request for $5,000 in additional funding.
Right, so if that's been approved, right, if we're operating with that assumption,
Yep.
so where's the?
So you've asked for 5,000. What I'm saying is, it's my opinion that you're spending more than that, and I'll give you some examples if you continue down the sheet in front of you. So at this point, and these aren't big numbers, right, but training 150 with a $60 budget so far this year. And when you start going through the way, and this comes from a historical perspective, Michael, is that we will see in August what we spent for police spending in July. Until then, we have no idea what the intent is and whether the amount we budgeted for July.
But where's the $5,000 in here? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
Well, I think because this budget, that is the lines here that are for budget, are the budget that was approved that last August meeting. So this extra 5, which we're really pulling out of other contingencies and dumping into your columns, will always look like we're way off budget, because last year's budget was, I'm going to say 10,000, and we're spending
8,700.
But what you're asking the safety committee to do is to live within the parameters it's set, which includes that $5,000.
Right.
That's right, but we get into this meeting every month, and we have this report that says we're running this in a deficit, and I don't see that. And if I don't see it, and you don't see it, who sees it? That's why I'm curious, I'm just.
Is there a way to add that 5,000 into these reports that we?
Well, but that doesn't help. The 5,000 is available, we've all agreed to that, that's not a problem.
Right.
No, right now, I have no idea what the safety committee, and this is the safety committee, has told Michael and Ben to work, or what we want our lifeguards to work. And I don't have any idea how that's attached to wages to determine what the total dollars you're going to spend are going to be. I don't know if you said, look, we asked for $5,000. If I look at the annual budget, which you all have, and then say a total of $15,000 available for safety, I don't know if what you have for a schedule is spending less than $15,000 or more than $15,000.
But we have the schedule that the police are working.
We went through that very clearly.
You came here and gave us a schedule that we
Yeah.
approved.
Are you suggesting that it's that you don't know whether or not the safety committee is adhering to the schedule that we all set? Is that what you're suggesting? Because
I absolutely have no idea.
Because I think that's where you're getting concerned, is because you have been good stewards on what we allowed with that additional money.
Right.
And
What
you're
all I'm-
concerned
I'm
that
not
the words
questioning-
are that the words from Steve are that we're not adhering to that.
Well, I want to go with the assumption that we all have equal transparency. And if Steve is saying he doesn't have transparency, and I'm saying I don't have, Bill, we've all been working with this shift around safety, right? We've gone through this painstakingly. That it's not just the safety committee, that there are others that have a window into it. And what I'm hearing in a public meeting is that it's the safety committee and we're arguing. And that's not what we characterize. We characterized a different approach this year.
What I said in my
What I keep
comments.
discovering is that approach isn't working. And then to default to the safety committee is where we have trouble.
Let me offer a different perspective, if I might. I'm not criticizing the safety committee.
I don't think you are.
We made a
frustrated.
transition that I think is an appropriate transition, trying to get operational related and management related issues off the shoulders of the volunteer organization. Absolute right thing to do. But you can't throw a switch and do that. There are some steps that are required to give Bill the tools that he needs to manage that process for you. Those tools, in my opinion, aren't in place.
Well, we need to discuss that, we need to look at it, and we need to have a conversation.
And that was my recommendation at the last meeting, was take a look at the schedule, build a spreadsheet, you can work with Mandy as well, determine what you're planning to spend, and are we in good shape or not? But there are gonna be times when the officers work beyond their regular schedule.
They shouldn't.
They should not be working beyond.
I got news for you. You know, the reality of what goes on with the police force is they are somewhat, they feel empowered. Would you say that's a safe bet? They go and do some things that none of us have approved.
Well, we
Now,
need to-
Bill will manage that. Bill will manage that. I want to come back to the financials. So it may seem like small potatoes, but if a police officer is making $20 an hour, works 3 extra hours, you spent $60 that we didn't plan to spend.
Well, there is some wiggle room there, yeah.
Okay,
That's-
Lee had a question. Lee?
That's what I warned against right from the beginning.
Yeah.
That once you approve the police department, suitcase and briefcase will pad their hours and they'll come here and expand the police department and it will be uncontrollable.
Okay, thank you.
Bill can't manage the process without some assistance. And the assistance is to give him the template that he should say, I can go look at, you get payroll reports every week. But there's no budget against that payroll report to say, our guys worked 20 hours this week, and that's really what they all talked about.
My frustration, and I'll say it again, is that I come to these meetings and this is the first I hear this.
Well, I won't raise it again, I promise.
Okay.
No, I'm.
So-
I'm-
No.
Thanks,
not-
once
Oh,
you get rid of the
hold on, guys, Judy?
That's not what I meant.
I-
That's not what I meant.
I think I echo Michael's frustration, but I do think that there has been, I've observed efforts to control specifically the police schedule. I know that you took efforts this month. I know Billy took efforts. So what you were concerned about, Lee, in terms of it becoming a police state run amok, there are people watching it. And this is another piece that Steve's talking about. He's just one layer behind because he's just looking at the math.
Yeah.
So I think the personnel piece, I applaud John and Billy for dealing with that this month. I think they're going to continue to. They have to bring Michael into and the committee into that conversation. And I think Steve's just telling us he's always 1 month behind, so this can't really help all of us keep track of that concern we expressed at the beginning.
And my concern, my complaint here is not with Steve.
Right.
He knows that. I hope he does. The other question I had, Steve, and I asked this of everyone, is I don't know why, I've never known why, in safety, we have street lights and hydrant rental, which is close to $5,000. Why that's not in somebody else's budget?
Yeah, you'd probably have to go back 25 years to answer that question.
Well, can it be changed? He's asking if there's.
The overseers can really have whatever they want.
I mean, it just seems like it's a natural infrastructure.
That's infrastructure.
It does sound like
And
infrastructure.
it does
I mean,
seem the
it's-
safety budget.
It's infrastructure that's designed for safety, but it's still infrastructure.
I would then ask the heads of the two respective committees to have a discussion to make a recommendation back to the Board of Overseers.
But if we approve the warrants, which is the motion on the floor, you need to know that.
It's another year it's like this.
It'll be another year. The streetlights and the
Hydrants.
hydrants are within line 6500, $36,117 for what we're asking the citizens to approve on our annual budget. So it will continue to be reported there. I think that in terms of your control, we should recognize the safety committee, called safety, is really lifeguard and police.
So we can't change that going forward now?
You'd have to change the
We'd
warrant.
have to change
You're
the...
sitting with a warrant in front of you for this year's annual meeting. It would be another year before.
Yeah, can we make a motion to change it from
For the next year.
that point forward and do it now?
For when we prepare the budget that we would be asking the citizens to approve in summer of 2020, we can do that, but that would show up on the financials for 2021.
That's fine, yeah,
Right.
well, yeah, let's fix it. Even though
And
it's-
I personally think that as long as we are very clear to the safety committee that we don't expect you to manage the streetlights and manage the hydrants,
But of course we don't.
right, so
But I would just like
safety,
it out of that budget, because
Yeah.
then it's a clean conversation about what safety is. Public safety here is not infrastructure related. So that's a motion I make.
To alter the current warrant,
No, to, after the,
Future warrant.
that's an equal, then we can deal with that at any point
well, right, but.
next
what he
year.
wants to do.
I think it would be better to have this conversation after the annual meeting, because you're dealing with a different set of finances then.
Okay, all
We're wasting time doing it now.
And overseers.
right. Then I withdraw the motion. And
But we
defer.
still have the motion on the warrant.
Steve,
I don't know
while
if it
you're
was
still
you made it.
getting your loins dirty, your swashbucklers, I was looking at this Article 7, which was the seawall thing, and doing some rough back of the envelope numbers. Is that a 45% increase in taxes?
Off the top of my head, I think it is, for my property, it was, so all the assumptions, right? That we use reserves to reduce the payment, that the interest rate in fact is 4%, not something less than that the utilities don't go forward and manage to get a grant of some kind to help protect the seawall. You know, those discussions are all underway, right? This is sort of what I would hope is our worst case scenario. Mike's pulled numbers together as best he can. So if that project were approved by the voters and were to go forward, my personal taxes would increase by about 33% for the seawall. There's also a 7.5% built into the regular budget, so we're up to the 42 to 44% range.
So if your Bayside taxes are $500 right now, they're going to be $750.
I just took the $2.7 million that we have to pay back on that loan and divided by 30, got roughly $90,000 a year.
Yeah, I think it's 92.
902.
92.
92 a year.
And our present asking budget is 230 some odd thousand that we're going to raise by taxes.
266. Minus the 25, minus the 8.
232 something.
Right. The budget itself will be 266. If the town approves the 25,000, you take off that, the 25,000, you also take off that, the money we expect to get from utility rent, 2,800 for interest and 700 for community hall rental. If the town doesn't approve the 25,000, then you have to add back into that 232 the 25,000. In any event, you know where I stand on Bayside taxes. It's the best $2.50 per thousand you spend. Keeps you happy.
Absolutely, but people are asking me how much is it going to impact, and I would say 20%, but it looks like it's close
Yeah,
to
it would be best if you say nothing, because what we need to do is put together public meetings with the facts, not with what people think and based upon this discussion and that discussion. I get asked all the time.
Between now and the annual meeting, you're going to put together some public meetings?
Well,
If
a
we-
month
if
ago.
we- We've been talking about this one for about 3 years now, to communicate what we have to do for the seawall, what the designs look like and everything else. And yes, I mean, between now and the annual meeting, if we don't have public meetings to say, here's what the infrastructure committee thought the design should look like. The overseers voted to put this on the annual meeting warrant as the process we believe is best for the village. These are the costs associated with it, as best we know it. Then when we get to the annual meeting, everybody's going to have those same questions. So And there are people still hung up, well, there are people who believe decisions have been made, there are people who believe parking's gonna be eliminated, I mean, you name it. All the discussions taking place over the past 3 years are being held, at least in part, based upon what someone had for a conversation with or what they were told at a point in time, that don't apply anymore.
Sorry, I asked the question.
No, I'm glad she did.
There is still an open motion on the floor to accept the warrant.
I haven't even seen it.
I move with previous.
I just mentioned that I had emailed it to you. You have.
Here's a
They
copy
were
right
handed
here.
out, they were
You
handed.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You have seen it because you saw the original version.
I saw the original.
Yeah, and Judy has a final printed copy. I emailed you a copy which you can take a look at, admittedly last minute because I just got approved.
We just
this
handed out
morning.
That's why I haven't seen the
The
revision. Okay, I'm sorry.
The information that I had
Can I
was worthwhile going
I know
forward.
we're in the middle of a motion, but can I ask a question about this, or no?
I don't know what this is.
This stuff, you know.
Our warrants, the regular monthly
I
warrants.
would say, let's figure out what's going on with the item of discussion now.
Yeah, and come back to those.
You sitting here away from me, go ahead.
Well, to review, we went through it painstakingly last month. We were charged, Tim, Steve and I were charged with assuring that in particular, I think it's Article 7 or Article 6, Article 7, said what we had all approved, which is the $1.6 million to encompass the potential borrowing, the potential spending for the north seawall, the entire causeway, the south seawall. In other words, broadening the scope of the original project. We worked very hard on getting that language right and making sure that the rest of the language was right, and we brought bond counsel in to make sure that that was right. We certainly don't want to have authorization to do this project only to find out that we didn't get the vote right. So Steve did a great and masterful job of keeping our feet to the fire to get this right. And Tim sacrificed a lot of hours as well. I think Friday afternoon, starting at about 3, we were on the phone until 5:15. And so this is what you approved last month. Please read most particularly the article with regard to the borrowing.
Number 7.
Right.
That's what I just wanted to look at. I read it, it looks good, looks good.
Well, that language came from our bond counsel.
Yeah, well, that's good. I just want to make sure it's what we plan to do. I don't know about the legal part of it, just the actual thought.
Is there further discussion on the open motion to accept the warrant?
I'm sorry, has there been a second for the open motion?
Second.
Okay.
There had been a,
Well,
Andy, I don't know.
we now have 7 seconds.
There's a second, yeah, it's on the floor. Judy made a motion, it's on the floor, you guys are still discussing it.
no, was there a second to her original
Seconded
motion?
my motion.
Oh, they just seconded it.
Okay.
No, originally, okay.
Originally, no.
Yes.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Little Robert.
Little Robert.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion to accept the warrant for the annual meeting? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Now, if anyone has a copy that has not been written on, sign it before you leave today.
Well, let's have one master copy, in other words.
And Beanie, you're gonna do your thing.
So you overseers decide where it's starting and which is the master copy that's being signed. It's starting.
I've
Oh,
written
you
on
read
mine.
yours?
I wrote on mine.
Dick, is yours clean?
on yours.
No, you're right.
Michael?
I can print another.
No, Mike line is there any writing on that one?
Is there any right?
No.
What am I doing?
Those are not.
No, you have writing on your copy.
I don't have a copy, I looked at Judy's.
Oh, okay.
I pulled this together, we'll move on. Move on.
Mike, you had a question about the other warrants.
Yeah, so I had a question about the sewer one. Where it says the outfall project low, and there's a split, what's the split?
It's an error.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, that was good.
So the challenge, as I mentioned earlier, with the accounting firm,
Yeah,
for some reason, the new people decided that should go to both utilities instead of just one single utility.
right,
So it's
okay.
on my list to go back with them for correction. And the other thing.
Are there other things that didn't make it on this because of the sort of the way things went this one?
Well, so are you asking for the backup, or are you asking for invoices? I'm not sure.
Yeah, things on the list like that they didn't.
So there are things that were on the last warrant, and they issued us a check after the fact.
Okay.
Because they couldn't get the checks here in time. Most specifically, Malone and McBroom would be one,
Okay,
and some Brown's excavation. So this comes back. Normally, we don't have the challenges we have right now of getting checks here when we need them here. And some of it is we're not getting things uploaded to the system. We're not sure if it's our error or their error.
Okay,
So,
all right.
Yeah,
So,
no, but-
yeah, that one was just seemed weird because I didn't know where else we were paying for the alcohol from.
it is weird. I looked at that and just shook my head.
Okay, all right. So,
Dick just raised an interesting point to go back to this warrant. Now that we know that we're losing Lee, this simply says to elect by written ballot 2 overseers to the MBC for 3-year term. We need to fill Lee's unfilled term.
Okay, so, well,
3, that's 3.
I will, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, but one of
but one of
them's
this is going to be
unfilled.
for a 1-year term.
So you're filling 2, 3, and the completion of
I'll do it.
1.
I'll do it.
You're gonna do what?
I'm going to go add that to this on the screen.
and then
On what screen?
Type
Shoot.
on the computer.
What
Is
screen?
there no computer there?
No, I have the computer.
Oh, good. I thought it
Where
was-
are you gonna get the document
Well,
that you're gonna type?
I was going to forward it to myself from here because you had an email.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. But there's no computer in there.
But I'd like to have a copy for my records, and if you go do that, I won't.
Okay.
So,
Can we revisit our vote on this warrant because we have to add an article?
A separate article regarding that?
Right.
I guess we shall. Is there a motion?
So you're sure you're not coming back?
See all the trouble you have if you stayed a couple more months.
They will give you a little time to reconsider.
Like a minute?
no, like a month, and then we don't have to change the warrant.
No, it's Lee. Lee knows what Lee needs to do.
I would make a motion that we add an Article 15 that is to elect by written ballot 1 overseer to the NBC for a 1-year term, and then change Article, what is now 15 to 16, which is reports on committees.
I don't have it in front of me, but I'm assuming this makes sense.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? That's
Thank
unanimous.
you, Dick. Good catch.
So, Steve, you had a note about having a new overseer open the warrants?
yeah, Vicki, are you opening and signing bank statements now or not?
No,
I'm available to.
Well, you
we
can't.
haven't talked about it yet, no.
I'm
It's either Michael or Michael,
Well,
right?
has anyone been doing would be the good question.
No, because I came in to do it, and I didn't know what I was doing, so I asked.
Right,
the
that's
question.
why I asked you that question. Remember I emailed you
Yeah.
and I said, it's in the mail.
So I can do that after this meeting.
Yeah,
So,
so
We
we
didn't
get,
want to sign it until we knew what
yeah,
was
no,
going
that's
on.
fine. So we have an audit requirement that the bank statements be opened by someone who does not have access to any of our finances.
Which would be me.
Vicki used to do that, but now that she has signing authority,
Right.
she's not eligible to do that because, they're concerned about somebody having access to the financial statements, changing them so that they can fraud, the NBC. So we just need somebody to sign it, just.
I understand what it is, and I just haven't
Yeah,
done it.
and the trick is making sure Mandy doesn't open them either when they come in.
Right.
Because you're supposed to open the envelope, just initial, and then we're good to go.
That's great.
So Mike's going to take on that responsibility. Thank you, Mike.
And just, FYI, under the, when I did it, Amy just held them until the meeting.
Oh, yeah.
and they-
Yeah, that's what we, yeah, because we weren't clear as to what the purpose of,
What I was doing.
yeah, the overseer, and it is to make sure that the envelopes weren't previously opened, I guess is the intent behind that. So we just needed that explained.
Yeah, so the way it's reported on the agenda here, where it says need for new overseer to open warrants, we really need open bank statements.
Bank statements, sorry, bank statements.
Okay, I
I
was confused by
apologize.
that too, okay.
That was my mistake.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Treasurer?
No, I'm done, thank you.
Mr. Village Agent?
Well, I'm in contact with the electrician for the center row lights upstairs at the community hall. One of the lights up there, for some reason, has got a cut in it and it's touched the metal, which has fried the electrical lights in the center and the switch. I had a temporary electrician come in. He cannot do that type of work, so now I've got to go out to a different electrician who can get up to the top and disconnect and rewire. So there's no center lights upstairs.
how does that affect things at nighttime?
We have the side lights. I know that John Woolsey wanted to know if they were going to be up and fixed.
That's not the dock.
Is it the climbing plus the electrical?
The height,
The height.
getting up to the top. Not everybody can get up there, and they got to rewire at least one of the lights got to be rewired because it got cut into the metal and it shorted everything out.
Okay.
For some reason, okay, so moving on. On the lifeguards, things seem to be going quite well on that setup so far. Couple little issues, but I think I've nipped them in the bud. I had to go out and purchase a new backboard and head restraint rest. We've needed one for a few years now. The old one, half of all the stuff is missing. So I purchased a new backboard, a new headrest that was delivered to them yesterday. I'm working on a couple other things that we need to upgrade with them. The one thing that's happening this year with the lifeguards is when the lifeguards come on duty, they're going to Blair and Beanies, they're picking up the AED, and they're taking it down and putting it in their lifeguard box, so it's on the dock when the lifeguards are on duty. When the lifeguards go to lunch, they're to put it back into the box up at Blair and Beanies, and then when they come back, they take it back down with them. The first responders for the town of Northport knows this procedure now, which they greatly appreciated knowing this procedure.
He did it.
We have some things coming up where we got to replace the child pads and the adult pads because they're going out of expiration. Still talking with the director of the first responders. They had to retire one, and if it's the same machine, they will have some leads that they will give us for free that are still good. Hopefully it's the right, the two same machines, because those things aren't cheap. So we're working on that. On the police department side, you know, where we have an official police department now, whenever they have to fill out a accident form or anything like that with a motor vehicle, it has to go through what they call the main crash. It goes to a centralized place in the state of Maine, and the insurance companies request from them the accident reports. There is a minimal fee that is charged for that. At this point, do the overseers want to be able to have that option of collecting that fee to be put back into the police department budget? I think, I haven't got the total thing, it may be the minimal fee of $20 or $15, I'm not quite sure yet, I'm still researching on that. But it's a fee that the insurance companies pay us to get those records.
Vicki?
How many accidents do we have?
We may only have one or two a year. So it's not a big.
Who will you be collecting it from?
What happens is the main crash system that this all goes to, insurance companies request the accident reports. The insurance companies pay to this entity, state entity. Then what happens is the state entity turns around and writes a check to the Northport Police Department to be put into that account, or the Northport Village to be put into that account.
Vicki?
I suggest, since it's a minimal amount of money, we leave that decision to the safety committee to decide if it's their budget, it's whether or not they want to.
Shake this head.
Cut that.
Thank you, Vicki.
That would be my suggestion. Yeah, I think
We've never had this process before, so we're just trying to clarify.
I was just looking, isn't it be nice if we could, I guess we don't
an extra
have.
$20.
Yeah, we don't have a line item that just has a miscellaneous, so let's talk.
Our treasurer doesn't like miscellaneous lines, that's why. He likes lines that
And
have
Steve was in on the discussion. We had a discussion, Ben, myself, and Steve, because I came to Steve to ask him the question, where would we put it in the safety budget?
Right, so what did you decide?
It really is an offset of wages.
Oh, yeah.
So if we get money for that, it just goes to defray the cost. And I think it's probably gonna take him 5 minutes to send the report, we get $10. Is that what we have?
Well, yeah, well, 15 to 20.
So,
So
whatever.
whatever the state, the main crash system is, you know, because it could change.
Is this where all the overtime basement is coming from? You know, just asking, man, I'm hearing about overtime.
Vicky, I can't wait till we get to trees.
Yeah, we're gonna finish up on trees.
That's true. All right. Did you need an action on that, Bill, or?
I was just putting it out to the overseers to see whether they wanted us to be able to accept that money. That's all. If we have to ask that, I'm not sure.
That's fine.
We just need more accidents.
Now, when people give us money, we kind of have to approve it sometimes.
We make money off that.
We do, it sounds like 15 a pop. All right, Bill, keep going.
There is this.
Roads, Steve kind of went over that. We're at, you know, critical point on roads. There is some roads right now that need some doctoring, but I'm just gonna have to let them slide. So I'm gonna have to talk with the different people that keep them at bay, but anything that's really bad, we will have to take care of. Not when we get through the summer months anyway. The library, I know there was an email sent out. People wanted to know who's, you know, who's taking care of the flower beds at the library and this stuff. And with working with that and stuff, we have 2 people that have made a generous donation for a company to take care of that. They're in the process of that now. They've dug out quite a lot around there now. So I think it's going to look very good when it's done.
Anne Marie.
And we need to thank, you know, Anne Marie and Samway and Tim. Anne Marie's the boss, I like to call her. So that's coming along fine. I'm still working on trying to find some library, I lost the word I had. Volunteer help for the library, friends of the library on the fence that we have to fix. We do have some money in the budget. I haven't had a chance to get a price on materials, but we do need to start working on fixing the fence around the courtyard. It is getting pretty bad. We have the money for the materials and possibly some money to pay somebody to do it. But I'm still in that process.
I'll help. If you're looking for a body, I'll come out there and do stuff.
Yeah, we have Dan put something out, maybe if you're looking for volunteers, but, you know, before
To help out.
before we say everything's been, yeah.
I gotta
You're
get,
looking for carpenters, I think.
yeah. But I wanna get the price of the materials first, so I know where we're standing on that and how far we can go. We've already discussed the stairs upstairs, underneath the stage. So the next thing that I guess is I have not heard anything about the North Street right-of-way, the no parking signs.
That is due to the negligence of the president, and he will address it.
So, can you address it then? Because, I mean, from public, it says he can't do anything until the wood pile's moved, and we've talked
I know,
about
I
it.
know.
He's
I just,
so many hours in a day.
it slipped. I apologize.
I mean, the guy's known about it, and he should.
Right, I mean, I can go down there and talk.
Have they been informed or no?
No, and
That's where
that's
you
my
dropped the ball.
negligence.
Oh,
Okay,
they
that's all
haven't
right.
been, oh, I'm sorry, I apologize.
He
I
didn't
thought he
send the
did.
letter yet. He went, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I apologize.
Then how would you don't move it? Sorry.
I guess the police department thing will leave. I guess Michael has stuff to talk about on them. So I guess that's it for me. Anybody have any questions?
I had a question, Bill, the runoffs this year. There's a lot of runoffs around the other blocks.
Well, it comes under the road budget, and when we don't have funds to get somebody physically out there to clean it up, maybe we could get some volunteers.
Yes.
It's an ongoing
We have
issue.
contingency fund. If you want to do something, you should request it from the overseers.
But as soon as it rains again, it's gonna be right back.
it's
Well,
not.
I'm just saying,
it's
there's a
not-
lot there now, and it gets a lot of traffic. It's a considerable amount.
Are you talking about at the corner
Yeah.
of Maple and Main?
Yeah.
Or?
No, at the bottom of the art club, at
Yeah.
the circle.
Yeah,
There's a lot of-
Maple and Main.
Yeah.
Yeah, right at
Where
the,
that-
Well, that's not technically Maple. It's
That's a
Robert.
long-term issue that Michael and I have talked about and
I thought it was Lower Maple.
I
trying to
live on
figure
that
it out.
street, I don't have a Maple address, it's not Lower Maple.
What do you,
Ruggles Park.
we always call it Lower Maple. Anyway, we're off subject, sorry.
Please.
Sorry, sir.
So do you, all right, so do you want me to go ahead and see if I can get that cleaned up, and at the same time, we got the same issue over at Auditorium, bottom of Auditorium Park that needs to be cleaned up, and there might be a couple other apron areas that need to be cleaned up.
I think if you're using contingency funds and our budget is tight, I think, if you can wait, you wait because rain's been horrible, and you don't know what other emergency will arrive if it doesn't present an emergency at this point. I would suggest you wait. But you-
Michael?
I guess I disagree, and I'm open-minded about it, but here we are, it's July, these parks are beautiful, and they have, the Auditorium Park and Ruggles Park have these issues, why would we wait? It's July.
I also think it's a safety concern. Gravel on pavement is much more likely to cause a slip and fall.
Yeah, the kids on bikes and stuff,
Well, Bill is authorized to spend up to $500, but I don't know, Bill, what we're talking about in this regard.
Yeah, all right, I'll look into it, see what I can do.
Anything else?
That'd be it for me.
That'd be it for you. Report of the office manager who says that she's, can't really speak that well, so she will not speak.
My stuff gets flushed out in other conversations.
Flushed or flushed? I hope flushed over. Committee reports. The long-awaited tree ordinance from Ms. Matthews.
Yeah, okay, so I left a copy this morning. We've been through several variations, lots of input. We had a meeting with the community along with the zoning. Then some more input. I changed some wording suggested in the last month by John Woolsey and Nick Brockway. And one of the tree committee people sent it to Jan Santerre, who is part of the main urban redevelopment. I forget her title right. She suggested the dividing up into captions, so I did that, and actually I think it gives some a little bit of clarity. So I know there's a question about enforcement of violations and penalties, but so I would like to make a motion that we approve this new tree ordinance and move forward.
Seconded by Judy. Any discussion?
I have a point of order.
Mike?
We cannot act on this until we get an understanding of the legalities of having a hearing and determining fines ourselves when we're talking about some of the work being done in a shoreline zoning area, which we have no authority over, the town has authority over. And I asked this question before, and it hasn't been changed, and it's interesting that you mentioned, Vicki, that you put people's opinions in or comments in, but you didn't address that one that I had. It's a legal issue, and I think it's frankly illegal based on what I've looked at, and I'm not a lawyer. So
I beg
we
to
can't, hold on, let me finish.
Okay.
We can't act on anything that we think might be illegal, so.
But may I ask what concerns you have as to the village's authority to adopt an ordinance after a public hearing? What are your further concerns?
My concerns are that it says including a replacement of a tree and fines ranging from $500 to $1,000. And we're supposed to, if after a hearing of the Northport Board of Overseers, I don't think we have the authority to have that hearing because it's a shoreline zoning in this particular case.
This isn't a zoning issue, this isn't a land use issue, this is a damage to public property issue, and the village corporation has the power to adopt a tree ordinance and enforce it. Indeed, it is because there is an expression of a range of fines that makes it an enforceable order. I understand what you're saying in terms of the shoreline zone ordinance in terms of private property, and what would occur in private property in terms of vegetative maintenance and vegetative cutting.
Yes.
And certainly our CEO has authority over that, but that is not in lieu of the abilities of this village to protect its resources from vandalism, which is what this is about. The old ordinance that we had was quite frankly defective because it didn't have the range of penalties and the opportunity for public hearing before the penalties were imposed.
Okay.
So that has cured the two legal defects that existed since 2001 or whenever we had our first ordinance. The people who came to the public meeting on May 25th raised very good concerns, and they were incorporated here, and there was continued opportunity for conversation. I think that this is a markedly improved document. I don't think it steps on the CEO's toes, and I remind everyone that to the extent that they cut illegally or improperly trees and bushes on their own property, you can expect a call from Tupi Rooney. But this is about protecting our resources.
Is that a formal legal opinion for
Yes.
the board
If
from
you
here?
want to know if I'm saying that because of my range of expertise in this area, the
Yeah.
answer is yes. I'm perfectly comfortable with this.
Vicki, you had your hand up?
I just want to clarify, I didn't ignore your request, Michael, which is why I mentioned it here. It was addressed at the public meeting. I just didn't want to get into that with you because I didn't have the ability to explain it as well as Judy did. So I heard you.
But we still don't have the authority to have this meeting for a tree that's in the shoreline zone.
We do. This is not a land use ordinance. This is a vandalism ordinance. This is an ordinance which says that if our property is damaged, we will exact a penalty from the person who hurts our property if we give them a proper hearing after they get a notice. This is not the person who tops their trees on their property. The person who tops a bayside tree may still be subject to shoreline zone violations by Tupi Rooney, but that doesn't substitute our ability to manage our parks property. They're two different things. One is a vandalism ordinance, one is a shoreline zone ordinance.
I have a question for Vicki. In the administration portion of this, it says the tree warden in the second line shall be appointed by the Board of Overseers. We've been running for the last short period of time with Vicki generously serving as a sort of quantum tree warden, acting tree warden. Is it potential, and is that a good or bad thing, that the tree warden would be an overseer? Does that matter to the overseers? And does this language affect that in any way?
This language would not prohibit an overseer from serving in that dual capacity.
As the tree warden?
It wouldn't prohibit anyone else.
Right.
Nor anyone else. I was just checking on that. And I don't suggest that you should be the long-term tree warden. I was just noticing that it seems somewhat fuzzy in that regard.
Well, and I have repeatedly asked people on the tree committee who have a vested interest in our trees when they're going to be willing to take over the position.
Got it.
And they're just clamoring.
Yeah, and it's silence.
Next to the last paragraph of the first page,
Expertise.
bottom line, the tree warden is missing
Ward.
in.
Oh,
That's
okey-dokey.
true. Thank you.
Nit.
You are very good at picking up these things.
You've done two good things. That makes up for all the other trouble you caused.
That's really, I do.
The last meeting.
Don't say such a thing.
I do want to give Dan Webster a lot of accolades for correcting my English grammar and such in the various modes that this has taken. So it's done a good job.
I still have a little bit of angst about the last line in the violations and penalties on the second page. No person shall allow. It seems to me, if I'm sitting on my porch and I see a dog urinating on a tree, I should intercede and prevent that. Is that what this ordinance is really saying?
Where are you?
Last paragraph of the first, last sentence, first paragraph of the violations. and
No person shall allow any harmful substances.
come in contact with the trees.
Well, you know, we'd have to have that scientific evidence that dog urine is actually a bad substance for trees. I'm not 100% sure.
You told me that I couldn't whiz on a tree.
Other questions?
If you must.
Jeffrey?
I'm going back a little bit to Mike's point about the difference between protecting from vandalism and land use. In order to have clarity that this is really protecting trees on public land from vandalism, does it make sense to have the word vandalism in it somewhere?
I think that might be too narrow, and let me give you an example to maybe better explain why I'm not concerned about the two. And it comes from my world as a real estate litigator. If my client goes onto his neighbor's property and cuts the tree because he wants a better view, my client is liable for trespass and damage. That doesn't mean that my client and the neighbor are also not liable for the damage to the tree if it happens to be in a shoreline zone.
Okay.
So it's a dual exposure to damage or to enforcement that you're confronted. This gives us the power to protect ourselves where the shoreline zone officer really has too much to do and probably wouldn't care.
Right.
So it is the layering of liabilities that we're dealing with. So to get to your specific question, should we limit this to the word vandalism? Then you're still going to get involved in the same definitional terms. You know, when it's, what is obscenity? I don't know. I know it when I see it.
Okay.
But this is, you hurt our tree. Whether or not the dog is going to hurt our tree can be an evaluative decision we go through if we waste our time doing a notice of violation on that. Keep it broad, deal with the situation.
I note also that it refers to a written notice of violation, so if this ordinance passes, some sort of form needs to be created to allow any village employee or overseer to indeed fill it out and say, this person violated this ordinance on this date, and here's the evidence, or something like that. Otherwise, I mean, it's stated, a written notice of violation, which I don't believe exists currently. So I look to some people to figure out how to do that.
So, if you explain to me, somebody cuts down a tree, okay? Then what happens? And who issues the summons? Who defends it in court? How does that work? I just want to know, I don't
Right,
understand.
I think you can use the example of our fire ordinance for the same process. Any village employee and any overseer, in accordance with this, who has information that someone has damaged a public tree, would issue a notice of violation. That person then is called before the Board of Overseers. We probably schedule a separate hearing on that.
Okay.
And we would say, well, John Smith said that you cut those branches off that tree, thereby damaging a public tree. And he would say, no, I didn't. And we would evaluate that evidence and we would say, well, we found that you did. And so you're going to have to pay to fix that tree, and we're going to fine you. If it's the 12th time he did it, we might do the high range. If it's the first time he did it, we'll do the low range. Or we might find that John Smith complaining about John Jones was just being a jerk and John Jones never did it. That's the process. Then, if that person doesn't like that fine, he has the ability to appeal to the Superior Court under Rule 80B and have a trial on that.
Right.
And so the written notice of violation, someone fills it out, and a village employee or overseer, and hands it to, who does that notice go to?
It would go to the village office and then be placed on our agenda
Thank you.
for either a separate meeting or part of a regular overseers meeting.
Thank you.
So, the cost of replacing a tree can be an expensive ordeal, or not, depending on the size. I don't understand why it has to be, you have to replace the tree and you have to have the slap on the wrist, because if they appeal it to court, then we have to go and defend ourselves. So why not just have them just replace the tree and be done with it? Like, I guess I don't
The point
understand.
of an ordinance like this is to have a punitive component beyond the actual loss of the village. If the person who cuts the tree simply has to pay for the tree, then the new tree, then they haven't learned their lesson. Just like if you're speeding, you pay a fine. You pay a fine to get corrective behavior so that you don't speed another time.
But there's no corrective action in the speeding. The corrective action is the fine and the increase in insurance. The corrective action here is replacing the tree, and once you've done that, if you replace a tree, you have to pay for that, you wouldn't want to do it again.
Well, but you don't know. It depends. With the people who wrote up the trees down below at the end of the park, we don't know what motivated them to do it in the first place. We don't know what would have stopped them. But we do know that if you want to have an enforceable ordinance, there needs to be a range of fines.
Jeffrey?
Well, so when I posed this question to you, what I think I understand you told me was, it's the range of fines that actually makes the ordinance enforceable. Like you can't have an ordinance unless there's a range of fines that are tied to it. Did I understand that correctly?
This is just an ordinance. Remember, it can be amended in the future, as this one indeed amends earlier ordinances. And so if this is passed and it is found that in practice there are some issues, future boards of overseers can address it.
So is there a motion?
There is a motion
Moved, I seconded.
to accept this ordinance. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Mr. Lennon opposes.
I think it's a very good job.
Well,
Thank you.
there was a lot of input, thank you, and a lot of different corrections and fine tuning, so actually, I think it came out pretty nice.
It's tight.
Every time I saw another suggestion, of course, I went, oh, shit. Excuse me.
Could I ask who's formally on the tree committee? I want to ask that as we go through today, because I really don't know who's on any of these committees.
True committee, yes, is Joel Littman, Mike Robbins, Jim Coughlin, Betty Woolsey, John Woolsey, Michael Terrell, and myself.
And is there anything further to report?
Just that we have a meeting on Friday, the 26th of July, 9 o'clock in the morning, and Michael Robbins has been successful in getting Jan Santerre to accept our invitation to take a look at our trees, maybe hopefully give us some guidance and further things to do. What's on the board are the emerald ash borer, and I've had several questions about the brown tail moth.
Not much you can do about that.
Information about the brown-tailed moth. I did do some research when a resident asked about it. There is an inoculation for trees, about $100 a tree. Not very many arborists are certified to do it. There is one in the area. He's not quite sure what the cost is, but it is at a cost of $100 per tree. So if anybody has trees on their property they can take that on themselves. Because of the amount of rain, there's a fungus that has afflicted them that is killing off some of the population. The other thing about this inoculation, it's done in the spring, and then they chew the leaves of the tree and then they die. Another couple things, if you have a tree here or elsewhere that's been afflicted, a 2-year cycle, the tree might survive. On the 3rd year, you might lose the tree because of distress to the tree. So I think there's more information than we had last year. My guess is by next year we'll have more information. So just some tidbits.
Where is that meeting occurring at 9 o'clock in the morning?
Here.
Okay. And we'll go out and do a walking tour? Is that what's...
I'm hoping I've turned that over to Mike Robbins to
Okay.
facilitate, and he's got tremendous knowledge, and
Wonderful.
I'm comfortable with that.
Sounds like a
What
great...
was the date?
The 26th of July, Friday.
Thank you very much. Communications, Judy.
Well, we've been busy posting things like meetings, notices for this. We had a public meeting yesterday. We have public meeting this afternoon, which is the governance committee. Part of communications is the voter registration. We'll be doing that Saturday, July, and this is being posted this week as well. I don't remember the date. Registration for voting for the annual meeting. I couldn't do it without Dan Webster and Mandy walking around the village.
So can you state who's on the communications committee?
Dan Webster and Mandy. It's a committee of one, and then I enlist these two people to do the real
And
work.
you, as the chair? Okay, you're the chair, okay.
I write the thing, he corrects it, she posts it.
Finance Committee,
Nothing to report.
Governance Committee, I know you have something to report,
Well, what do I have to report?
but there's a meeting later on today at 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock, we have a meeting today. It's a public meeting. We are going over the survey results and where do we go from here on the zoning.
So it sounds unlikely that there'll be a recommendation for the voters at the annual meeting.
Gosh, we have a lot of work to do if we're going to change and how we're going to change.
Thank you.
I want to point out that Dan Webster has done a significant job in taking the surveys and recompiling, cross-filing the information. That is on question 1, 33% voted yes, and 28% voted no, whatever the rest.
I agree. Thank you, Dan, very much.
That's
There was a big chunk of them. Infrastructure Committee, Mr. Lannon.
So was that 3 committees that you just did? So who's on the finance committee?
Me.
Just you?
Yeah, and we never meet.
You never meet? Okay. So there's nothing to report?
And I serve as I think I serve as a listening ear for Steve. I'm not sure if I'm
Okay.
effective, but that's what I do.
And governance is Blair, me, Judy.
Tim, Brock, did we put Dan on? He didn't ask. And Angela Cassidy.
Okay, okay. Just curious, because I just...
There has been a list that has gone out of committee
Yeah.
members earlier,
Has there?
like this November, December, somewhere
Yeah,
like,
it was before I.
somewhere
started.
like in there, a list went out of committee chairs and committee members.
Yeah, maybe we just eliminate that. And I can stop asking the question. All right? Tamina? Yeah, so infrastructure, so
Who's on your
who's on the committee? That's a very good question. No, so actually, we will have an opening, unfortunately, 2 openings, because Brock and Lee are on it, and they might not want to be on it if they're not overseers. They are invited to remain, I don't know.
I see you shaking the head over here, no, so.
Yeah, I had a
One.
feeling he was going to say that. Because, yeah. And then Art Hall is also on it. Billy is on it. And myself. Billy is sort of the agent. He's not official. So that's the committee. Obviously, the number one thing we're doing right now is the seawall, right? So where we are with that was I met with the engineer, Art Hall and I met with the engineer. I sent the thing out to the infrastructure committee. And we went over the possibilities of adding the other items. They're in the process of sending me a scope to do that. I'm trying to get just enough, I have enough budget left for them to create some figures that I can use for the public meetings. In lieu of that, I'm going to go with whatever information I have to date, which is just to have these meetings. The plan is to have 4 meetings, short meetings. One would be a morning, weekday evening, Saturday morning, Sunday evening type thing, so that everybody has an opportunity and do it over a few weeks. Very short meetings. I've developed a general sort of memorandum. It's going to be draft of sort of how we got from where we started to today. It might not be 100% correct, and I'm not trying to correct it. It's just kind of an idea to get people started. It doesn't have a lot of numbers in it and everything else, but that's just kind of where we went from the beginning to today. And that'll be something I can send to Dan and we can post it. And people can read that, and the idea is at the end of it, it says, come to the meeting if you have specific questions, I'll have the plans, and we can talk it through.
Quick insert here is that if you're planning 4 meetings, I think is great, create a single sheet. Infrastructure Committee invites you to talk about the seawall. Here are the 4 opportunities. People can put it in their fridge and decide which one they're going to go to.
Yeah, right.
So just 1 sheet of paper with all 4 dates, and obviously it's a month to the annual meeting, so.
Do we have the dates now?
No, I wanted to send it out to the infrastructure committee to see how many people, if they had any comments about which days.
Okay, needless to say, the sooner the better.
Well, yeah, I know, it just needs to be done. I mean, the longer I wait, hopefully the more information I gather from the engineer. One of the things, I wanted to wait to send out the memo until after yesterday's meeting, so I can incorporate that at the very sort of the end, is we also are talking about protecting the new building.
Is it possible to set the dates and get that parallel process rolling? Because here we are, and then all your other things as well. I mean,
Sure. Yeah, I mean, right now, you want to do it now?
I think you should unilaterally decide what the dates are.
yeah.
I should unilaterally decide.
I think you
What
should.
works-
Given
what
that
dates
there's-
work for you, Mike?
Mike, given that there's 4, there's plenty of opportunity in there for people. So I think I applaud the notion of 4. I think that's a great idea. So that no one can say, well, geez, it was on a...
Right, it's a great idea.
So, but I think you should just decide. It clearly is not going to, I don't think you would make it the weekend before the annual meeting.
No.
So the latest would be
And there's still
first
plenty,
weekend in August.
there's
and
plenty of time to do it, but
Not really.
Well, but you need to put it out in front of people so that they have a week or two to look at it and go,
It has to be
oh.
weekend. I mean, if you want maximum participation, you
well, that's, I'm going to have weekdays and weekends.
I think it's good.
Yeah, so that,
So maybe end of July, beginning of August, but ASAP.
okay.
So, and get that sheet together, you get it posted, Dan can get it out, that would be fabulous. So if that would happen by no later than, Wednesday, Thursday of this week, that would be
Okay.
wonderful. That gives people a couple of weeks to look at it, decide which one they can attend.
by the way, in looking at my calendar, and I mentioned the voter registration, it's Saturday, July 27th, 10 a.m. on the community hall porch,
What's that?
the voter registration
Is for the village?
for the village, yeah, for any new homeowners who aren't yet on the rolls or don't know if they're on the rolls.
How do we know we're on the
If you own your property, then you're on the rolls.
rolls?
If you're listed as the owner, right? Is what you-
Right, you have to be,
Yeah.
there are some wives who are surprised to hear they don't own their cottages. Then I usually have to be the one to say, you really should talk more.
And maybe some husbands too.
But I mean, just back,
At 10 a.m., you said? Excuse me, starting at 7.
just to go back for a minute, sorry to belabor the point, but it's less than a month away, the annual meeting.
Yeah.
And setting these dates seems to me critical.
Okay.
I mean, we're already, here we are, it's Sunday the 14th. By the time you get those rolling, they would be out next week, that you really are running out of time, it feels to me, to get people to 4 different meetings or 4 different
Well,
options.
it's four options, yeah. I mean,
Same meeting, but 4 hours.
Yeah.
I-
What are you doing forward then? Would you like that?
That'd be great.
All right, that's what you're really asking, right? Just asking.
Well, it's expressing a concern.
All right, that's fine. Okay.
Anything else?
Well, I mean, just the road stuff, we're there, we don't have any more money, so that's not it for right now. And then the North Street thing, I need to get the wood piles moved. I talked to the engineer when we were we walked over and looked at it again. And the goal is for them we're gonna do the Tootsie Roll thing for the embankment, and then incorporate in their design a new storm system to get to that pipe, so that we can try to collect some of it before it overflows inside. And that will be sort of the gist of it right now. So they're just doing the design.
As far as the road issue goes, Steve has made several mentions of the $7,000 still in contingency, and I sort of leave it up to Bill and the infrastructure committee to determine if you feel like you want to draw upon those funds, or if mid-July is too soon to make that decision. Maybe that's
It's
something
too
that
soon.
happens later in the year.
We always have roads that we need to build up, so we always have the ability later in the season to add material to the roadways and to grade them and bring them up higher. That's one of the tasks we have. We can do that with whatever amount of money is left over, so we don't need to do it now. Other than doing what you were talking about with the cleaning. We can do that.
What will expand to fill the money available?
Exactly, Dick.
You can look at it that way. The other way you can look at it is we've already identified, the amount of work we still need to do on the roadways, and whatever we can do this year would be.
If you don't spend it, safety will, just remember.
And That's somebody.
You're on record.
You're on record now, exactly. By the way, I have to say that the roads in general, in Bayside, are in better shape than they were 5 years ago, let's say. And so I applaud the Infrastructure Committee and Bill for bringing them up to a higher level than they have been. Not literally a higher level, that's metaphorical. But
Some of them literally.
some of them literally. And I recognize that there are always issues and there are other roads you want to be addressing and all that, but in general, they're in better shape. So that's a great thing, is to walk or bicycle or drive through the community, and they're in better shape than they used to be. Anything else, Mike?
No, that's it.
Utility Committee, Mr. Crowfoot is not here.
We did not meet on Friday. Our cycle for our next meeting is going to be this Friday at 2:30 for the utility meeting trustees. But we did have our public meeting yesterday. It was very lightly attended. So I will say what David said then, which is that we are doing a new little building to accommodate the requirement for year-round treatment, which is something we didn't have to do before under old I-license. That little building is going to be, we think, paid for from reserves. We think we have sufficient reserves for the sewer department. It's going to be in the exact same location as the present building, but will be bigger to accommodate an employee being in that building doing the year-round testing. Dick Brockway has made models of some variants and provided a scale model there so that you could see what people are talking about. We don't have the final design. There are 4 alternatives, one that looks like the library and pump house buildings, one that looks like Shady Grove, one that looks like a conventional gingerbread cottage, and one that mirrors and is and works with the yacht club. Very low gable on the roof, so it doesn't have very much height.
What's the approval process for?
We have to go through all the permitting process, which is why we're hiring engineers, we're working with the ride
No, but in terms of the choice.
We consciously didn't take a straw poll yesterday. We learned that straw polls might not be the best thing to do. But the low gable roof is the one that people keep clutching. Let me put it that one.
Yacht Club mimic.
Yes, exactly, and it creates it creates an environment there for these two, and it also is the lowest effect on the view shed. That's right. The process of going through this is going to be all permitting and getting it done. We've checked off a lot of the compliance items on our agreement with the EPA. We're right on track with those things. We intend to get the design working up soon with Dorigo's help. I'll just put in a plug for the Article 7 now. Obviously, we are mindful when we do this that we are rebuilding a sewer building on the edge of the ocean, and the ocean is rising, and there are issues that we need to think of. We're spending a lot of money on that building. So part of what that article, that is the big ticket item for the voters, is to take into consideration the South Shore seawall, which has riprap now. When you go there, it's all gone down. That's part of that $1.6 million. It makes sense to secure and protect our infrastructure. We've talked a lot about the North Seawall, we've talked about the Causeway, and we've talked about the South Seawall. We're spending a lot of money to comply and keep waste treatment possible in this little community. And so I encourage you to go to these public meetings that Mike is going to have on the seawall design and what we're talking about, because it's important to the two things to work together. I think that Dorigo and Dick and David have done an extraordinary job of keeping us on task on this timeline, and it's working well.
And Judy, assuming that all of the timeline continues working well, when would a new building be up?
We have to be online in December 2020.
A year and a half from now.
Yeah.
Online meaning that it's operative
It's
and Bernie's able to stand up inside. Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate the few members of the public who were here. I hope that they got the answers to the questions that they wanted, and I hope that when they translate to their friends the answers to the questions, that if you don't remember something, just come back to us. We're very happy to talk about it again.
Just two things. One, these are to scale. So this is the normal size, these are the new sizes. And the second thing was the only comment that I heard yesterday that wasn't something that we had been considering was someone asked about odor control for the wastewater plant. Since we're building a new building, is this the time to consider something like that for a short term? And that was to me, that was the only sort of new topic that was discussed.
Right. That's a good addition because we did say we would look into that.
Yes.
And I think that you in particular said that, yeah, it's expensive, but we'll look at it.
Right, and we would obviously probably be looking at it just for the time frame of the season, not necessarily all year.
Anything else?
No, that's more than I should have said, but.
No.
Well, that was
Safety Committee, Mr. Terrell.
We have,
How many months of budget?
all those dates coming. We had a very successful safety day, and I thank publicly Lisa Fryer and Jessica Cohen for putting that together, two members of the safety committee. We're very grateful to have. Huge participation, great turnout. We gave away 455 hot dogs.
Really?
Huge number.
That's how you measure it, by hot dogs.
I forget the number, but it was quite high. And the kids participated, really active scavenger hunt, so we had a different level of involvement. And grateful for all the Bill's work on it and Jim Honey in organizing all the safety providers. I have a suggestion, I'm going just randomly here, I have a suggestion, back to this police reporting, the police wages thing. I have a suggestion, Bill, that we work with Michael Boucher for a weekly report of where we stand and where we are vis-a-vis the budget, so that we have transparency into that, and you and I can work on that.
Yeah, you and I got it together, because I do have the actual time cards. So we actually know the hours they work. We just got to break down the overall scale of what was approved by the board for the time, for the season. We need to figure out the numbers.
Yeah, but I'd like to go beyond this, this assumption, however deeply felt, that we have something that's growing out of control, or that people are budgeting or working outside the budget. So I'd just like to see it, that we do it so that when we show up here every month, there isn't this curtain drop on something that may or may not be true. So that's important. And that's not a ding on Steve, I'd say it if he was in front. I just want to make, we worked really hard all winter on this to be clear, and I want to see that we follow through on it so that we don't hit any wall, especially at the annual meeting. So let's look at that. Number two, we have a report from the police department on activity to date. This is police activity from June 1st through July 6th. We've had 43 vehicle stops, 31 of which have happened at the village core, 6 on George Street, 7 on Bluff Road, 16 on Broadway, and 1 each on Griffin, and near the pump station on Shore Road. 12 stops out of the core mostly occurred on Bayside Road and Outer Shore Road around Kelly's Cove respectively. From these stops, we've issued 5 traffic citations and 2 criminal summonses for criminal traffic offenses. Number 2, in addition to the summonses and citations, the officers have conducted field sobriety testing on 1 driver, and on July 4th, that was on July 4th. That driver was not written up because he passed the impairment test. We're issuing paperwork and citations and summonses during 16.27% of our traffic stops, which is above average of approximately 10 to 12%. This is based on the nature and severity of the traffic offenses which we have encountered and guidance which we have provided to police. This percentage is provided because it has come to their attention that there have been complaints that we're issuing too many citations and alternately that we're not issuing enough. So, that's important. My intent here is to eliminate any of the hearsay, go to data, and we've been very clear that this is what we're doing as a committee. To date, most of the major traffic offenses that have occurred were last Saturday on George Street when there was a traffic stop on another vehicle and there was a situation with a driver that got away in a speeding situation. The details aren't important. Both officers report anecdotally an impression of a reduction in speeding vehicles that we're now seeing across the village. And that's due to increased awareness and perception that they're out there. Vehicles have been traveling we have a 15% coming in, and they're not seeing the speeding that we've all experienced and had impressions of in the past. However, we do have this prevailing issue of speed, the impression that we have speeding dump trucks on George Street, and that's been raised in committee, and we've addressed it. We've asked them to look at it. They've set up a couple speed traps. I've asked if they would go along to where these dump trucks are and tell these guys, we know it's not you, but we have reports of people like you speeding. So maybe you want to tell your friends who drive dump trucks, don't be speeding in Bayside. So they're doing that. And I've asked for a written weekly report like this so that we know. We've also had 14 calls for service for those being within the village core. Most serious of those have been a theft complaint, an injured child on the beach and the rocks, harassment on the wharf, and a motor vehicle accident involving power lines on the vehicle. All of those complaints have been closed except for the theft case, which is still open and under investigation.
Thank you. Wow.
So there's that. Number two, my third thing here, that's number three, is the committee has looked at and has a concern, has been raised in our last meeting, about parking on Ruggles Park. And we have a number of situations in that middle lane where people are parking their cars and going out to sea, literally. And then we have a situation where we have a problem, and we need to look at it, because the police have raised an issue that if they had an ambulance coming in, we'd be at risk getting down to the seawall. And people are, and also people, neighborhood area residents are parking there when they're here in town. And it's becoming a not small problem. Committee would like direction.
I don't know if the overseers at this meeting immediately can provide direction. I certainly think that it is an issue and that there are, Mike Lannon said to me absolutely appropriately, we're not losing any parking spots when we build a new seawall, and there's plenty of space to park up there. You're absolutely right, Mike, and I think that people think up there, meaning anywhere heading up through Ruggles Park, and so Ruggles Park is becoming more and more a parking lot for people, and
Parking lot and also a boat trailer parking lot. So one thing I heard last night at the yacht club, and it was a suggestion I thought was an interesting one, is can we look at satellite parking in Cradle Park for people that are coming in and need to go out on their boats for extended stay?
That has been in existence for quite a while.
For parking cars for people that, they're not
So
doing it.
the answer is yes. We have a parking ordinance which is very, very, very watered down. It's one of the ordinances that the governance committee is supposed to be reviewing, and we keep putting other things above the line. So we can help in going forward in getting a more rigorous parking ordinance for you. We can publicize that there is parking locations available. People can park at their own property, for instance, where they have driveways that they might want to use. Or the Cradle Park is available for parking if there's space in it.
It's not really though.
Right.
I mean,
there's not much space
Right,
in there,
there's
to be
not,
honest.
right.
We've got trailers and the way that it's configured, because it's so long and thin, it's almost, there's not much room there.
So is there a mechanism for fining?
The old parking ordinance, which is about 15 years old, doesn't have anything good about that. That's one of the things we have to, and it's very watered down in any event.
Well, is it an issue where people are parking in no parking zones, or that there's no real understanding of where one may park?
People are leaving, it's simple. So far, people are leaving their cars in the middle of the park, in that middle lane, for days on end.
Okay.
And some of them live up the street, we know who they are. And also, some of them are literally going out to see, they're parking, and then they're off they go.
Yeah.
And so these cars are there some cars have been there.
Well, there was a car where the license plate read out to sea.
No, it said gone sailing.
Gone sailing, that's
Yeah.
what they actually gone sailing.
That's
Those two cars.
Yeah, we know.
We know who they all are.
Yeah.
And their road is in the morning.
So there's a different, I thought we were talking about hours.
We
we're
know
talking
who
about
we
days.
want.
I just want to say, I brought up the same parking issue with trees, with Auditorium Park, and was told by this committee that, parking's always been a problem in the village. And, it's what battle do we want to take on? But yeah, when you started talking, I'm thinking hours, but now you're going into days. It goes back to, putting up this is my private parking spot on village property. I think that the audacity of some people, it needs to be addressed.
This is a village that was not built for cars, and so we're dealing with that challenge now. Bill?
And that has been an issue for the sewer department. That's why there is a drum down by the building that says no parking, emergency vehicles and authorized people only, because people are parking there days on end, and the car's not moving, and our treatment plant operator cannot access what he has to access in the ground when he has to access it. It's not just a set time that he accesses it. It could be any time during the
So it's
24-hour period.
not,
Put up a sign, no parking.
so it's not a safety
Well,
committee
say it.
issue.
I think what the governance committee should do is we should move that up, and we need to work with you as to what we need to do. We have a parking ordinance. Beverly sitting there probably remembers how David probably has scars across his back still from the audacity of David trying to introduce reason to parking 15 years ago, and nobody's taken that hot potato since then. We need to take that hot potato. And we need
It's
to
a
tell
big
our friends and family
Yeah.
that they are pushing the envelope and it's not appropriate. They can
I
walk.
mentioned it a couple
from
of
their
people, and
cottage.
it went over like a lead balloon.
Right.
So that's sort of a cross between safety and infrastructure. Safety-wise alone, like when we had the kids' games in the park, the police officer, the plan was, after we had talked about it at the meeting, I talked to the officer and he was gonna come up with a plan for traffic and so on. And I was under the impression that we were gonna block that off during that time frame. In fact, a couple of these people went sailing during that time frame, and had we, it would have been nice, because when we had the band in the park, and you're sitting in the park, all the cars were in the way.
Yeah, I couldn't even see the band.
Right, and so, I ask a question of, at least from a safety perspective, because that's where we are now, when we have events like that, are we allowing the officer to block it off or not, I guess is the question.
What we said when that question was posed, I guess at the last meeting, was that the committee, whoever is recommending closing the street, be it for a private party or for an event, they need to come to the overseers and get permission to block the street. That's what we said
No,
last
we
time.
did that at the last meeting. We said for July 4th games, we'd like to do that. And I thought the answer was, it's fine, but we just have to check with the officer to make sure he has a plan.
It's a separate, the biggest issue is this. We had the safety, and this is why I remember that. Safety day was almost compromised because we couldn't get access to where we said we were going to have. Yeah, it was the middle lane, and it was completely blocked with cars parking, and many of those cars were there for the whole week. So we need to do something about it, because it's really impairing the use of the park, and if people think, oh, no one's around, I'll just leave my car. Somebody leaves a car with a hitch attached to it, which completely blocks, everyone else's use of it. And I think this is something, here we are in July, are we going to have the whole summer now with this, or can we take it?
Well, this is actually the Waterfront Safety Committee has been dealing with in terms of dinghies, and so it may be that we have to come to some similar sort of solution.
We have to take on that hot potato.
No parking sign.
Well, just to throw one more wrench into it.
The what?
Limited.
15
The
minutes.
2-hour parking.
15
Yeah.
Loading
minutes.
and
Just
unloading.
to throw one more wrench into it, I know last year, the officer, when he saw people parked on roads in front of their cottage that didn't have parking spots, and they were parking there and sort of half blocking the road, the interest of cars being able to get by, he actually said you should go park in the park rather than block the road. So we have to think about how we incorporate that into this discussion as well. Like, instead of going to the park, they should be going somewhere else, right?
Okay,
I'm just,
got it.
And just, last thing I'll ask is, John, I don't know how the annual meeting is choreographed, but I'd like a few minutes at the meeting to make a similar presentation so that if people react to an increase in budget, they are reacting to, they are also aware of performance and data.
Well, Tim, do we have opportunities for that?
I didn't quite hear you, Michael.
The reports to the, there is a
Yeah.
part of the annual meeting which is reports of the committees. And so that's exactly, you have your written report. Many people say it's all in the annual report.
Right.
I would love if you read something like that, because
Yeah.
that's
I
really
would
a
just
bang
like
for
to
your
show a
buck
slide or
presentation.
So just letting Tim's
Yeah.
the moderator,
Because
so,
I have no intention of having it be people reacting to something that they don't understand.
well, when you say show a slide, figure that part out, also, that's the second issue, okay? We don't usually have a screen up there showing slides, that means a projector.
Well, I
is
thought
set.
that we were going to have it for the, didn't we talk about this at the last meeting, that you
Yeah.
needed to show a few slides from the infrastructure?
At the annual meeting, are you
annual
planning on
meeting?
making a
well, I thought the plan was we were
PowerPoint
trying to have
presentation?
all this stuff done before that.
Yeah,
We can easily,
Well, we
we
can
can
do
work
that.
with Ned and get you what you need.
okay.
And I might do that too then, just in
I
case people
volunteered
didn't
now.
come to the meeting, we can have the.
Waterfront Safety Committee, Mr.
Let me
Wilk.
say two things on
Okay,
the
sorry.
safety committee here. One, I really appreciate that data that you just provided,
Yes.
the
Yeah.
16.2% type of numbers and that type of thing.
Thanks.
And secondly, we had a very nice visit from Officer Kolko.
Kolko.
Ben, came down, sat on the porch, chatted for a good half hour. And, it's surprising how many people came down Auditorium Park and turned around and went back when they saw the police cars. We were not under interrogation or arrest, it was just a social visit. He's a charming individual.
Jeffrey.
Not a lot to report, you know, we're a month into when we really have been looking to enforce our rules. Our sense is, in terms of the dinghy floats, the wharf float and the outer float, things are going pretty well. We owe a lot of thanks to Gordon, our wharf master, and his assistants, Craig Brigham, Bill Haverty, and Jim Coughlin, who have been a quiet, polite, with a good sense of humor way, kind of moved the offending dinghies to the outer float, and it really worked with people to understand the system. You know, when I'm in town, I'm down there every morning on my paddleboard at 6 o'clock, and it's been looking good. We can continue that. So we have about 55 watercraft owners who have completed the voluntary registration. And as we look to next year, we're going to try to figure out how to drive those numbers up. Pleased with how things are working on the floats. I do think the North Shore and the beach is a slightly different kettle of fish that the committee will work on going forward. We really wanted to see how this summer went, collect data, understand what the issues are, with data backing it up. And we're going to have some work to do on the North Shore of the beach.
What's going on over there?
Well, there's just a lot of stuff.
So many kayaks.
There's a lot of kayaks and a lot of, and you know, like the parking, it's people we know. I mean, you know, I see kayaks that were deposited there Memorial Day weekend and haven't moved once. And, you know, we're now 6 weeks out. So it's the notion of, I open my cottage, I take the kayaks out of the living room, put them down at the beach.
Take it out.
And that, you know, the committee, in the spirit of education, the committee is just going to have to think about ways to continue to work at that. I think Dan there was a Bayside picture of the day post several weeks ago that had the picture of all the kayaks, and it was saying, sort of, remember to do the voluntary registration and getting across the point that there is not limitless space. But we're feeling good with how it's flowing.
Vicki, did you have a question?
No, I was just going to say, I just heard, and I do actually like some of the anecdotal things I hear, but I come in and I said, how's it going? And the one resident says, I already paid too much taxes, I'm going to pay your $5.
Yeah.
I just think it's interesting, just interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a few of those, definitely.
That's all right, I mean, that's all
Not as
right.
many as I
But
thought.
also anecdotally, if anyone goes down to the boat float, you just count the number that are there and think about what you saw last year and look out at the outer float and you recognize that a few have moved out there. So there is progress being made. Thank you very much.
And it's always helpful to remind people that we pay a lot of money in taxes on what we own here. And the Bayside piece of that is a very small piece of that. And you get a lot of reward for that, $2.30 per thousand.
Anything else?
No.
I want to thank all the committee chairs for all the work that they do and have done month in and month out. Much of it is thankless, but it is appreciated at this end of the table, certainly, and I think by those who view on video what we do here, because it is through the committees that the work of this board gets accomplished. So thank you all. Town of Northport issues. Bill, anyone?
I was at the last meeting. Eric Heim was also there and gave about a 45-minute talk there. But actually the most significant thing, and I'm just sort of out of the loop, is that there were lots of concerns, from the few people there was a concern about what was happening to the Point Lookout properties. And their response was anything that the new owners have to do has to go through the planning board, and you can see the planning board agenda on their website. So if anybody knows of anybody that has concerns about that property and what might be happening, that was the response.
I have an action item that I would like to raise in the context of the town, and it relates to the land we discovered that we own on Upper Griffin. Griffin, is that the street?
Griffin and George.
Right. We had a year ago when this first came to us, one of the things we did when his lawyer was Jeremy Martin, we said, and we should work together with the town to get the tax map changed to reflect that 4540 or whatever our lot is ours. We stopped talking to Jeremy Martin. We got a different lawyer. We haven't had any more talk, but I think we need to write a letter to the town asking them to change the tax maps, presenting the survey that shows that we own that land and have them. For one thing, he's paying taxes on it, and I think that it should be clear as a public record that we own that land.
Do we have a copy of the survey?
I would have to write that letter, I'll need instruction.
I'll send it home. If all of you think that that's the right thing to do. He is paying taxes on it as a matter of law. That would not mature into adverse possession. You can't have adverse possession against a municipal entity. That said, why should he pay taxes on something he doesn't own? And shouldn't the public records reflect what we do own?
I guess I was under the impression just once that was identified, they would have changed the map. But
They
that's
need
not
to-
the case.
They need to
Be
be
processed.
asked.
New and continuing business. Are there any meeting attendees who would like to talk?
Just in one comment.
Tim.
For the town business, there's a section on Shore Road from approximately Mike Landon's house to Dan's house that really needs some serious work with patching. There's been some trucks and construction the last couple of months. So at the next overseers meeting, the next selectmen's meeting or whatever, or before that, I know that they did some patching on Cross Street, so they've been out doing it, but they need to do it down there.
I think they're holding off because they're gonna do that road as well.
The whole road?
Yeah.
Oh, they're doing all shore, right?
No, that's.
Did you hear that, Tim?
that section's being done this fall, in September, but that's probably why.
I did hear that, but
That's not
you
why.
have to patch it before you pave it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's a sort of aimed excuse.
I'll put a bug back into the year again.
Thank you,
I
thank
keep
you.
pestering him.
And as to that, down at the Kelly Cove section of the property, which is called Kelly Cove Cottage, all their driveway has washed down into the road, and so it's a gravel hazard, much like what we were already talking about,
Yeah.
down at the bottom of Ruggles Park. There's lots of gravel in the middle of that road.
So I'll have to tell him about that too.
Vicki?
And I will say at the town meeting, Eamon was asked about, roads and stuff, and he basically had nothing to report. Everything was pretty much okay.
Yeah.
Well, we had the same issue with the big tree that fell on Bluff Road. He's supposed to clean that up, and he just didn't get to it, didn't get to it, didn't get to it.
So
And everybody kept after him, finally coming down it.
Dan Webster, did you have a?
I did, yes, thank you. I'm Dan Webster. I have some comments from what I heard, mostly on financial issues. Mike, when you said you weren't sure what to do with the bank statements when you opened them up, Steve said you open them up and sign them. But I just want to make sure that you understand, I think the intent is you open it up, you look at it, see if there's anything unusual there. And that's an internal control to make sure that there's nothing untoward going on. Not that you have access to all the financial information, but if there's a big withdrawal that you don't know anything about.
Yeah.
You look at it for that purpose.
Yeah, Steve and I went over this because it was unclear in the overseer's manual. But basically what this is just a control to make sure that people who have access to cash in the accounts aren't opening the physical statement. So it's not really on that overseer to do any checks beyond that. It's just that they're physically opening the papers.
In other words, it actually came from the bank and.
Right,
just
that they
kinda
came from
slipped
the
it in
bank.
drawer.
Yeah, like I have them in this folder.
So I don't think I'm
not being
supposed to
opened.
look at the
Okay.
actual
Right.
numbers.
Well, when the finance committee
That's why I asked when.
does something, maybe that's something that gets added, because that would be a good control for
It
you
would,
to
it
actually.
would, but that's why I asked what I was supposed to do
Well, yeah,
before I did it.
the auditors have required an independent person to open it,
Right.
so that a substitute dummy page can't be put in there by the embezzler. The treasurer reviews the statements to assure that there's not that $30,000 check payable to Judy Metcalf.
Dan, as one of the people in the past, as an overseer, who's been the party who's opened them, I will assure you that there's usually 8 to 10 of them, and the complexity of them is such that it would be expecting too much of any overseer necessarily to be able to, on the spot, be able to pick up irregularities.
And our only audit requirement is that it be opened by someone who's not the one touching the money. You're right, what we're trying to monitor for is we're sure no one is taking our money, but that is his job and her job and the bookkeeper's job, and they are bonded, or he's bonded.
Okay.
I'm not bonded.
No.
I don't want to do that then, I'm not bonded.
Steve had mentioned something about commented financials, and there's a number of pieces of paper that were floated around here that aren't available to members of the public as part of this meeting. I'd just like to suggest that as we send out the agenda or prepare for these meetings, that you make those available to the public to see.
Different things go out at different times and are made available to us even at different times. So the financials are something that we only saw.
You will not be able to see the financials at the time the agenda goes out because Steve doesn't have them from the bookkeepers until typically the Friday before the meeting. This is what he is talking about, and he, as you know, typically puts some on chairs there for the public to pick up, and you, of course, are entitled to get them. What his comment was that typically he has footnotes on these telling us, oh, you should really look at number 7302 because that looks like something I need to correct. He did not do that on this one. That's what he meant by
I
it's
assume the
not
public could make a request for those
Absolutely.
if the public were so inclined. But it's helpful when you're seeing this meeting to be able to see what the overseers are looking at. A comment on moving the hydrant and lights to the infrastructure line of the budget. Given that that apparently has been the way it's been for 20 or 25 years, if you make that move, your financials aren't going to be comparable from year to year. So I don't know if it's just a matter of convenience for doing that, but I would generally be opposed as a member of the public that looks at the financials and doing that because you can't see what's happened year over year in a specific line department.
Until it happens, and then you can't.
It's more, it's just, it's sort of,
Footnoted also.
and we have to remember that Steve's already done a bunch of this reorganization, and this is just one of the ones that we probably just didn't catch, right, at the time. It is a safety, but it's not really
Right.
safety.
And
it's
I
infrastructure.
personally think that the streetlights and the hydrants are safety issues. But I hear what you're saying, and I hear that it'd be very easy to simply footnote, hey, you're not, $20,000, you think we're saving money here, but that's because we moved 15 of it down here. We can do it either way, we can talk about it. That'll be next year.
I agree with your classification too, that it is safety. But I also understand why Michael would like his budget to be more defined in what's in the budget. In terms of the tree warden appeal, if you want to send out an appeal for somebody to serve as tree warden, I don't know if you're looking to move out of your acting, but that or any other committee assignments, I'd be happy as part of the communication committee team to send that out. And then the last thing, I have a number of meetings here that I'll get on the calendar. Please let me know if there's anything to add as you learn about it. But the last thing is on labor. Whenever you talk about the police department being $20 an hour or whatever, I don't know what your taxes and benefits are. A lot of places you also have to make contributions to pension funds, and it can just make that $20 an hour go up to $30 or $40 an hour. So I just want everybody to think that way as opposed to just $20 an hour, because there are extra costs
Right.
associated.
Well, except it's accounted for differently.
Yeah, the roll-ups, we are mindful of the roll-ups. I think that was one of the things that Michael was caught unawares of when he was trying to work on the old budgeting versus the new budgeting. But we are, when we say $20 an hour, we're talking about the base rate of pay. We are mindful that there are roll-ups that we have to really talk about, as to all our employees.
And I'd like to echo whoever said, Dick, I think that your summary was very helpful. I think that's something that should be sent out to the community.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before you go, I picked some dates right now while we're sitting here.
Good.
So if you know of any reason off the top of your head why these don't work. Sunday morning, July 21st, that would be upstairs in the community hall at 9 a.m. That would be between the two presentations of the, whatever the Bayside Arts people have, so that it should be set up kind of as a theater anyway, so that would be fine, right? And then Wednesday, July 24th at noon, lunchtime? What's that?
I'm putting it in my calendar.
Okay.
7:24 that was?
7:24 at noon, lunchtime?
Go ahead.
Middle of the day one, for people that want to do that. And then Tuesday, August 6th, that would be an evening one.
6 p.m.?
6 p.m. is what I had.
Before the meeting, before the annual meeting.
Right, and then August 10th, Saturday morning, before the meeting. Because that would be whatever the last things we've gotten in, we can talk
Like
about
at
that.
10 a.m. or something.
Yeah, I had 8 a.m. I thought we'd do it early because it's Saturday, that's,
Well, races over.
Those are good options.
So August
Yeah.
10th, that's not pancake breakfast, is the following day, right?
28th.
28th?
yeah. Yeah, this is like the last day of the yacht club, so I wanted to have it before people left. Because I was thinking of doing that one of the Sunday one, but I'd rather have it before.
Yep, no, that's good.
So these sound like great dates. Is someone who's putting together the sheet of mine?
I have an email I'm sending to Mandy that has those again.
So it's going to have, come and learn about seawall stuff, public meeting, ask any questions you have, here are the dates.
And there's a little space between the first two and the last two in case we get some more information.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much.
Can you just, wait, can you just quickly give me the numbers again? The 21st, the 24th?
At noon.
I missed the third one. What was it?
August 6th, Tuesday evening.
And then August 10th,
And August 10th.
And Saturday, the 10th at 8
8
a.m.
a.m.
Great, love it.
Sorry, the first one was at 9 a.m., did you say?
First, yeah. Why don't I CC you on this?
9 a.m. on the 21st, noon on the 24th, 6 p.m. on the 6th, and 8 a.m. on the 10th.
Yeah.
Perfect, love it.
Thank you very much, Mike. I appreciate
I
it.
CC you.
Could I say one thing?
Please.
My term as overseer is finishing today. I have been very happy to serve. I've enjoyed the majority of the time. I apologize to those that I've been rude to. I thank those who have helped me. And to quote a famous activist, free at last. Free at last.
Thank you very much, Dick. And Lee, also, you are going to step aside after the annual meeting. This is actually, your term technically extends up to the annual meeting.
Yeah.
There might be an emergency meeting just for you.
Right.
That would be an emergency.
But I wanted to, you stole my thunder because I was going to thank both Lee and Dick for their extraordinary service. Lee, you were pulled back out of retirement to return to us, to this board, and I don't envy the nomination committee at all in terms of finding people to replace you. But that's for the nominating committee to determine, and to make sure that we'll let everybody know that those positions are available. But thank you for all you have done. I know that we'll be seeing you around still, and I trust you may draw upon your expertise as time goes on. We're not out of the meeting quite yet. New and continuing business, I did note that do we need an NBC policy regarding golf carts? John Von Bergen, who lives next to me, was originally going to get a golf cart. Now he didn't. He got a little tricycle-y kind of thing. But just throwing this ball out there down the road, which is that the next board may want to think about a policy. The police officers have already weighed in terms of their opinion on the matter, and just saying that it may be out there. I don't know if anyone else in the community wants a golf cart or not, but it would change things a little bit. So, Judy?
Well, I was going to say the police department said that it was feasible under the existing laws, so I'm not sure if we need a policy, since we'd rather it be the exception rather than a rule. We wouldn't want to invite people. And I was deeply appreciative to Billy and the police department for listening to me say, the answer is yes, find a way to get to yes.
Right.
John Von Bergen asked permission, and a lot of people don't ask permission. So.
Right, and I agree with you. I would rather not say, you know, NBC is open to, Bayside's open to golf carts, and have suddenly 38 golf carts show up the next year.
Well, it might solve our
I'm
parking
just
problem.
noting it.
But I vote the digging committee could take that on.
Sure.
It's
not closely related.
I already got the.
So, just,
Mike? Yeah.
so for the record, are we talking about electronic, low-speed electronic vehicles? Electric, low-speed with license plates, or are we talking about actual golf carts without?
He was looking at an actual golf cart without,
Right.
with the orange flag, and it was for health reasons, because he can't walk.
So it turns out they're not going in that direction, but it's something that someone else, we are not the youngest community in the state of Maine, nor is Maine in the United States. So it may not be the last we hear of this. So just,
Well, there are people that now, I mean, I have a neighbor who shows up periodically with golf carts.
Not a golf cart unless there's golf bags in it, just one.
exactly. Our next meeting is scheduled, just a reminder, our next meeting is going to be just a few minutes before the annual meeting, around 6 o'clock here in this room. We meet downstairs, everybody gets organized, and then we'll head upstairs for that one. Anything else that we haven't hit?
Blair just needs to find a fiscal conservative and an engineer. Okay?
So what should we wear for the annual meeting? Are we all gonna
Those same
wear the
pants you had on last night, Mike. This meeting is declared over.